Every sport has its big event. Every sport has its premier event, the one you want to win.
Oh, I won the Daytona 500. I won the Daytona 500.
This is our premier event. When it's all said and done, that Daytona 500 trophy will be the one you look at the most and remember the most.
If you're fortunate enough to sit on the pole for the Daytona 500, it is a big, big deal.
Jimmy Johnson, your Sprint Cup champion.
Hey, that Levin car is bad fast. He's my man.
It's the defending champion of the Daytona 500.
He has rewritten the record books all the way up to now.
NASCAR's most popular driver, Dale Earnhardt Jr.
And that 14 car looks good.
Daytona 500 pole qualifying on Fox.
Glad you're joining us. NASCAR on Fox, and proud to present Daytona 500 pole qualifying from Daytona International Speedway. 48 drivers loaded with optimism, and among them Jimmy Johnson, 5 straight NASCAR championships. Can he keep it rolling? Kevin Harvick, 2007 Daytona 500 winner. Kyle Busch, he's led the most laps in 2 of the last 3 Daytonas. Denny Hamlin, the runner-up last year in points, and then Carl Edwards have finished strong with back-to-back victories to end the year. We'll hear from all of them, and we'll see all of them throughout a beautiful afternoon here in Daytona Beach, Florida. Temperature in the low 60s. Sunsplash day with the cool temperatures and a light breeze. Jeff Hammond, Chris Myers, the gang all here today, and we were all here last night for the Budweiser shootout. 24 drivers and a lot of 2-driver tango.
Yeah, it really was. Dale Earnhardt Jr. said it's a new style of racing, Chris, and definitely it was. It was really exciting, including the big one on the back straightaway, which Regan Smith, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Carl Edwards was involved in. They got hooked up. Biggest wreck of the night. Took out a lot of good cars.
There were a series of mishaps, and in this one it was Kyle Busch and Mark Martin, who at one point were driving along together. Everybody okay. Michael Waltrip hit speeds of 206 miles per hour, also involved in a wreck, and spectacular pictures there. But at the end, with Denny Hamlin trying to make a move down at the yellow line, it was Kurt Busch, his first win ever at this track in Daytona. Only led 3 laps, but enough to pull out the victory. We welcome you to the Hollywood Hotel on an exciting weekend, off to a fast start. And we're glad you're with us. This is where America gathers every weekend for NASCAR. Well, what have we seen last night that we might see today? And it's really all about next Sunday in the Daytona 500.
This is just a setup for next week, because you got to get it, guys on the front row established. You're getting yourself ready for the 150s on Thursday, which are going to be also very exciting as far as racing here in Daytona. But everything that we saw last night tells me that we're set for probably one of the best Daytona 500s that we've had in recent years. And that's hard to believe, but I believe that.
Can we keep the speed within?
I hope we can. But they showed why they're superheroes last night. They controlled the cars. They made great decisions. I know we had some accidents, but you're always going to have accidents. And I think they did a great job, and we can look forward to that as we go into Speed Weeks.
All right, some drivers weren't able to run last night, but they're anxious to go today, and our Steve Burns is with one of them.
Well, Chris, Brad Keselowski, the first driver out. Look, he's got that nice new uniform. But how frustrated were you to watch all that fun last night and not participate?
It was stupid frustrating. I'm glad Kurt won. Really exciting finish. He did a great move at the end. And, the biggest thing you learn from it is just how patient you have to be. That whole race, Kurt spent most of it running anywhere from 5th to 10th. And towards the end, he put himself in the right spot, got himself to the front.
And thank you. 28 lead changes in the Budweiser shootout, a record for that race last night. And you heard Brad talk about patience. Jeff Burton led the most laps, but in the end, he wasn't there, so people can shoot to the front. How about today's qualifying for the front row? Give us some names you think might wind up there at the end of the day.
Well, honestly, I think there's a good possibility we can see the same front row we saw in 2010, and that right there is Mark Martin and Dale Earnhardt Jr. The guys who could challenge them happen to be ECR drivers, and believe it or not, Paul Menard, the new member of the team right there, along with Jeff Burton, are probably the fastest guys from that camp.
Yeah, always nice to hear different names for the front row. The guys who called the race last night and will take us through the Daytona 500 and another season for NASCAR on Fox. Darrell Waltrip, Larry McReynolds, Mike Joy. Have you guys recovered from the shootout last night? Have you slowed down?
Well, nobody shot anybody. Let's put it that way. And it was a lot of fun to see a type of racing we've not seen at Daytona before, with all of this, as you called it, 2-driver tango. But today, Darrell, the driver has 2 roles: getting his car up to speed, and then he's got to keep from scrubbing off speed on his time lap.
Yeah, don't ever believe that the driver has very little to do with the kind of lap time you're going to get here today. The first lap's the wind-up laps. You leave the pits, got to get through the gearbox nice and smooth. Don't over-rev the engine because you can hurt it. Get it up high, right up next to the outside wall. Bring it around here, get some speed up, and then take it to the bottom. And do not, whatever you do, fight with the steering wheel. Be as gentle on the wheel as you can be. You don't want to scrub off any speed. And then don't touch the brakes. It always tickled me to death when I'd crawl off in the car and I'd look down and a big note on the steering wheel would say, no brakes. And I'd say, how am I supposed to stop if I don't have any brakes? But what they mean is keep your foot off the brakes. So they do a whole lot of trick things, pulling the pads back and all that kind of thing. So driver has a lot to do with it.
And you know, the biggest thing is we have 36 qualifying sessions a year, but teams, the drivers, everyone's prepared for this qualifying session for over 2 to 3 months. And when your driver can bring the field to the green flag next Sunday for the Daytona 500, it is huge for everyone involved with that race team.
You heard from Brad Keselowski. He is the first driver to qualify. 49 drivers were entered for the Daytona 500. Norm Benning did not practice, so he is not eligible to make a qualifying lap. Keselowski still driving for Roger Penske as last year, but he moves over to the Blue Deuce from the number 22.
And I think because of having that number 2, a lot of people have tagged the nickname on him, BK2, this year in 2011.
Keselowski, second-generation driver from Michigan. Driving one of 4 Dodges entered for the 500.
And we saw, just like we were talking about there, Mike, you get that wind-up lap. Take her up nice and high because these cars pick up momentum, and you want to be at max speed when you come to get the white flag.
First lap up top, second lap right around the bottom, around that double yellow line that signifies out of bounds under racing conditions.
Yeah, you might. I don't think you'll see anybody drop below the line coming through the trioval here on their final lap, but occasionally somebody tries that. It's a little shorter, and that's what you're looking for, shortest distance.
Keselowski turned 27 yesterday. He's the defending champion of NASCAR's second tier, the Nationwide Series, and he clocks in at 184.008 miles per hour. Welcome back to Daytona International Speedway pole qualifying that will set the front row for the Daytona 500 next Sunday on Fox. New ride for Bobby Labonte, past champion, but since he is in the top 35 in last year's car owner points, Labonte's locked into the 500, as are all of the first 35 drivers who will qualify. And Labonte, you see on the ticker, second at 183.5 miles an hour. Steve Burns.
Mike, Clint Boyer, the 5th driver to go out. Now, Clint, you were in the middle of all the mayhem last night, but talk about pole qualifying and what this could mean to this RCR team.
Well, I mean, we were close. We were like 6th quick in practice, and it's a big day. You know, starting up front, the biggest race of the year means a lot to everybody. There's a lot of work, a lot of emphasis been put on qualifying here. We've been down here a lot. You know, I haven't had a chance to test in the last couple of years. Been a lot of time on the racetrack. And this is what it's all about. This is what all that time's been, you know, money's been spent on, is this day right here. So hopefully we can put this Cheerios Hamburger Helper Chevrolet on the front row, preferably on that inside front row.
All right, give her a run.
Thanks.
Kyle Busch, wild thing. He was winning thing last year. 3 victories in the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series, 24 wins across all of NASCAR's top 3 series. That shattered all records. 8th in the Sprint Cup standings, driving for legendary Super Bowl coach and past Cup champion owner Joe Gibbs.
And those wins this year, if he could do that again this year, and assuming nobody else had more, he didn't make the chase last year, but those wins would have gotten him into the chase under the new format.
Yeah, it was 2 years ago when he didn't make the chase, back in 2009. Came up just a little bit short.
Last year, or excuse me, 2009, Kyle led 88 of the first 120 laps of the 500, but wound up for 41st after getting caught up in the big one.
You know, a lot of times we want to beat Kyle up for maybe walking away from the interview when he's had a bad day. But he said this offseason, he relates his two philosophies about winning a lot to what Al Davis, longtime owner of the Oakland Raiders, always told his players. One, there's nothing more important than winning. And two, demanding a commitment to excellence from not only his team, but most of all from himself.
First lap for Kyle is about a 10th slower than Brad Keselowski and Bobby Labonte, who had identical first laps. You see him in third place on the tracker. He's a newlywed, got married in Chicago on New Year's Eve, honeymooned for 2 weeks in Jamaica.
Just to follow up a little bit on what you said, Larry, about winning. You show me a guy that's not committed to winning, if that's not the only thing he thinks about, I'll show you a guy that doesn't win much.
I think we saw that last night in the Budweiser shootout.
Yes, we did.
It's amazing, though, our first three cars, Darrell, they run within less than a tenth of each other. That's about what we saw yesterday.
Here is the key statistic on this tracker in blue, white on blue, and that is the differential between this car and the fastest car. 1/10 of a second. Kyle Busch, 183.59 miles per hour. Second fastest so far. Matt Kenseth rounds out of turn 4, and he may take the pole spot from Brad Keselowski right here in his Roush Fenway Ford, and does. Kenseth is the fastest so far, the 2009 Daytona 500 winner.
What's good about that lap, he backed up his practice lap from yesterday, and it is much, much warmer today than it was yesterday.
See what he's doing right here now. He cut the engine clean. It's some of the driver's responsibility. One of the things we used to do is we'd call this a coast down lap. So he's coasting down the back straightaway right now. One of the things he wants to do is sometimes not even stick my hand out the window to see where the air was hitting the race car. I would listen to see if the air was flapping on the side of the cars. So when I got back in the garage, I could tell the crew chief, look, we got a little aero thing going on here we need to work on. So it's just another little thing that a driver, a sharp driver, will do as he comes back to the pit road.
All right, let's go down to pit road. Matt Yoakum.
My former national champion Bobby Labonte finished 10th in last night's Budweiser shootout. So the biggest lesson learned from that crazy race last night?
Yeah, well, we didn't participate in the January test. We did the tire test, and felt like we learned as much as we could there. And but last night was a little different for us because we weren't really for that. But obviously you just got to be hooked up with somebody, and we got hooked up with Tony at the end, but his radios were out, so he didn't want to really be up there in a mess without a radio. So I think we had a decent run after the first segment, and learned a lot for Sunday. If everything stays the same, we'll have our plan will be of what probably a little bit better than going into last night's race. So looking forward to it, and qualifying today was a little better than we practiced yesterday, so we'll take that and see where it ended up.
Should be a wild 500. To Dick Bergeron.
Kyle Busch last night had a good run until Mark Martin pushed a little too hard to the back bumper, took him out, crashed both cars. How can you communicate with the guy behind you in one of those two-car deals that you want him off your back bumper?
I don't know. We'll have to get brake lights or something, turn them on, or flashers, or I don't know, throw up a road flare or something. But it was just a product of what we had last night. It'll be the same thing probably in the duels, and of course for the 500. But all in all, today's the qualifying day, and we knew we didn't have a shot for the pole with our M&M's Camry, but we're looking for top in class hopefully today with the Toyota guys. So unfortunately, we all just don't seem to have the speed we're looking for down here, but our stuff races really good, and it's really fast in the pack, and obviously we saw that last night with Michael Waltrip and I teaming up and hitting 206. So we feel good about the race and what happens here later on this week, but with what happened last night, we just have to all talk about it and figure out how to make a better way of communicating with each other somehow.
It was a wild night.
Thanks, Dick. Clint Boyer from Kansas is on track to take the pole away from Matt Kenseth. His first lap was almost 2/10 quicker than Kenseth's. Boyer won at Talladega last October, NASCAR's most recent restrictor plate race.
Jeff Hammond mentioned this at the top of the show. We anticipate that it will be a battle between Richard Childress Racing and Hendrick Motorsports for this pole here today. How about 48.59, getting close to one of the fastest speeds from yesterday's practice session.
Yeah, that's 185.2. Of course, I know you're probably saying, well, last night they were running 206, but that's with all the cars out there and a lot of drafting and pushing, working together. But that's a pretty good lap. That's about where I thought they'd be. Just quickly on Kyle Busch, talking about he and Mark Martin. I heard Mark say, I don't know what happened. I did the same thing I've been doing all night. what the difference was. Kyle entered the first turn higher on the racetrack than he had been all night, and Mark ran the same line. Mark got just a little too much over to the left side of the car, and I think that's what spun him out.
Mark Martin was the other half of that crash. He's on track for his qualifying lap, the defending pole winner of the 500. Here's Chris Devoda.
Thanks, Mike. With Joey Logano, and you had such high hopes for the Bud shootout, and then you were one of the ones caught up in the mess. Were you deflated last night going to sleep?
Yeah, it was. I wasn't very happy when I went to sleep, but you know, at least it was a shootout, not the 500. I won it for points, but you know, we did learn a lot. There still was a lot of good things that came out of there. You know, we did get to make a pit stop there and kind of get used to new fuel cans and all that stuff. So there was a few pluses that came out of it, just not the way I wanted to end it for sure. I had a really fast Home Depot Toyota and felt like I had a good shot at winning it, and you know, just got to make it to the end first.
Hey, Mike, he could make up for it today by becoming the youngest ever pole sitter here at Daytona.
That would sure be a difference, but this is one of the fellas he's going to have to get past. Mark Martin has started on the front row of the Daytona 500 the last 2 years.
One of the things that always scares you as a driver, when you hop in this race car to go qualify, the first thing you're going to holler most of the time is, we don't have any oil pressure. And it's funny because they drop the oil pressure as low as they feasibly can to keep as much resistance and turbulence out of the engine as possible. It's just another one of those little tuning things, but it'll scare the heck out of you when you take off. You got 20 pounds of oil pressure.
First lap for Martin. It's a quick one, about 100 quicker than Clint Boyer, who presently has the pole.
But he was all the way up against the wall on that first lap, using as much real estate as possible to get that car wound up, and then on the second lap, the shortest distance, right against that yellow line.
And you can see his hands were not moving any. I mean, he's just basically leaning on the steering wheel, trying not to buff off any speed, because it's going to be within hundreds of it, if he beats Boyer.
Next Sunday, Mark Martin will start his 795th Sprint Cup race. It'll be his 27th Daytona 500. Can he score his third front row start in a row? Second to Boyer, 48.651. So by 6/100ths of a second, Mark Martin misses, snatching the pole from Clint Boyer. Matt?
And catching up with the Daytona 500 champion from a couple years ago. And yes, we are here to talk to you and to talk about last night's Budweiser shootout from the driver's perspective. What was the edgiest part?
Well, I guess the scariest part is when you're pushing someone you can't see, you know, and we're running 205 or whatever it is, and you can't see anything. So I mean, if that guy drives into a wreck, you're going to shove him into the wreck, and if he, you know, so that's probably the kind of scariest part. And the frustrating part is you've always needed other cars to draft, but you could get behind cars and keep up to the pack and make some moves. Or here, if you didn't have somebody just absolutely shoving you, or if you weren't absolutely shoving someone, you know, you were done. And at the end there, I tried to get with Denny and couldn't get up to him, and ended up being odd man out, and I got lapped in 15 laps. So it was pretty frustrating.
All right, thanks, Matty.
Yep.
But you know, in all honesty, it's no different than it's ever been down here. I mean, we haven't changed anything. Well, we have a spoiler versus a wing earlier last year, but still, you can't see through these cars no matter what, though. You couldn't see through the wing. You can't see through the spoiler. That's just all these things that I hear them talking about. It's not like it's brand new.
Tony Stewart on track. Last year, 2 victories, 7th in the standings. He told us the other day, this year, he is poised to come back and perhaps win his 3rd Sprint Cup championship. First time at Indy for the 500, he sat on the pole. First time at Daytona for this 500, he started from the front row.
Tell you what else he shared with us the other day. You know, he has some World of Outlaw teams, and last year he hired a young lady out of New York, Jessica Simpkin, that drives one of his World of Outlaw teams. He said as we started traveling around the country, we realized we somewhat enjoyed each other. Guess what? Jessica's now dating the car owner, Tony Stewart.
First lap for Stewart, 49.30. That's within the range of Clint Boyer and Mark Martin. Stewart time trialed 10th fastest here last February, and he's led more laps at Daytona than any active driver.
And he's one of the guys I was talking about last night, kind of look at Jimmy Johnson and kind of judge off what he does. Tony's lost a lot of weight. He's lost like 15 or 20 pounds. He's down to real. He looks really good coming into this season, physically, mentally, emotionally. I think he's well prepared to get a great start.
And we knew he would be a player as far as a top qualifier, because I think we've well documented in his third year of being with Stewart-Haas that they get the Hendrick engines, they get the Hendrick technology, so not surprised to see him up there.
And there he went below the yellow line. Now that's perfectly legal when you're qualifying. Get down on that apron if you want to. Just don't do it on the last lap, well, any lap of a race.
Third quickest for Tony Stewart, 48.67. That's 8/100ths off of Clint Boyer, who is fastest so far. Steve?
With Kevin Harvick. And Kevin, you said even though there's $20 million worth of asphalt on this racetrack, it's still the same old chess match. Was it last night?
Well, for us, it played out really well, and you know, there towards the end we started hitting the rev limiter and weren't able to do the things that we needed to do to push the 24. But we'll have that rev limiter changed, and it'll be the same old Daytona, and we'll be right where we need to be in the mix of it come Sunday with our Budweiser Chevy. So happy with the way that it played out. Obviously, you want to win, but definitely a different strategy. But this is Daytona; doesn't get any better.
We like the new uniform. Let's go to Matt.
Steve, I don't know anybody who's more excited about Speed Weeks 2011 than Mark Martin. A fast car every practice session, including last night's race, but a crazy incident between yourself and Kyle Busch. Have you talked to Kyle, figured out what happened yet?
Just racing. You know, no. I don't think either of us really know. So that was last night, and today is a day where our run was a little bit disappointing. I think we were hoping for a little bit better. We really were good in practice, and that's not quite where we ran in practice, and we were hoping to back up practice time, and would have taken that, got the pole, or maybe a little bit of a pickup. So, you know, the car is fast, got a lot of horsepower, slick race car. I'm proud of these guys, and we'll just get ready to go racing now.
All right, good luck next Sunday.
Thank you.
A look at last night's crash, Mark Martin and Kyle Busch. Ryan Newman, Purdue engineering grad. They call him the Rocket because for a while he was qualifying on the pole once out of every 4 times we had time trials, but he's never qualified higher than the 4th row here at Daytona for the 500. He won it from 7th starting spot in 2008.
Mike, Gerald, that's the fastest first lap that we've had, just a little faster than Clint Boyer and Mark Martin at a 49.226 for Ryan.
I don't believe he'll pick up as much of Larry, because as he's coming down here in the trial, well, he already had started to go to the bottom of the racetrack. So that'll be interesting to see if he picks up a lot on his second lap. I don't think he will as much as some of the others have.
Newman looking for his 47th career pole, and you see that stat shaded in blue or backgrounded in blue. He is 2/100ths quicker than Clint Boyer right now.
You know, I think we tend to forget, since this is his 10th year in the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series, that he won the 2002 Rookie of the Year, beat out Jimmy Johnson.
Close, but no pole for Newman. Second to Clint Boyer, 48.64, 185 miles an hour. Coming up, Stephen Wallace, Casey Kane, Andy Lally.
Daytona 500 qualifying on Fox is sponsored by Sprint, proud sponsor of the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series, by the new 2011 Ford F-150, built Ford tough, and by Napa, Napa know-how.
Stephen Wallace, the younger son of former Cup champion Rusty Wallace, times in for his first Daytona 500, 49.29. He's the slowest of 9 so far. This might be his only Cup start of the season. He's going to run the full nationwide series. Matt?
Mike, it's been a productive Speed Week so far for owner Tony Stewart. The King, Steve Kinser, won back-to-back in his Outlaw car. His 39 car with this guy, Newman, almost won the shootout. And right now, you guys are sitting 2nd and 4th on the board. Not too bad so far.
No, I would settle for where we're at actually right now. So, you know, we had a good run with our Office Depot 1 Chevy, and Ryan with his U.S. Army Chevy. We're really proud of everybody at Stewart-Haas Racing. It's a good way to start.
All right, Steve,
with Daytona 500 champion Jamie McMurray. What a year. You win the Daytona, you win at the Brickyard, you win at Charlotte, and you and your wife have a baby boy.
Yeah, it was a great year, and it'd be hard to top that this year, but we got off to a really good start last night. Our Bass Pro Shop Chevy ran second. It was a really exciting race for a driver. I mean, I had a great time in the car, and I hope it was fun for the fans to watch. But we crashed our primary car yesterday, so this is our backup. But the guys worked. Literally, I was just talking to the guys, and they didn't even get to watch the race because they were in the garage rebuilding this car. So we changed engines and all the suspension parts. So hopefully we have a good solid run here.
Hey, good luck. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you,
Mike.
Thanks, Steve. This is Casey Kane carrying new colors for 2011. Actually, he joined the Red Bull team with 5 races to go in 2010, leaving the Richard Petty Motorsports Gillette-owned team. And in those 5 races, he won the pole at Homestead and finished 6th. That was one of 4 poles for Kane in 2010.
One of the Toyotas, and we saw yesterday in practice, looks like they don't have a lot of speed for qualifying. We feel like we saw in the Budweiser shootout last night, that these drivers should race good. Got a lot of speed in race trim.
Kane's first lap quicker than Kyle Busch, who is the fastest Toyota so far. Casey had surgery on his knees in November. Put that off until the postseason last year. Ready to go. He'll race with this team for 2011 and then move to Hendrick Motorsports.
And you know, he shut the media down when we were here for testing because they were kind of referencing that this is just a stepping stone to Hendrick Motorsports. He said he is absolutely not viewing this year as that. He's looking very forward to this year with Red Bull Racing.
Kane is the quickest of the 4 Toyotas so far. 7th overall with a lap of 49.01. Clint Boyer, Ryan Newman so far fastest in Daytona 500 pole qualifying. This is Andy Lally coming off a big win in the 24 Hours of Daytona with this same team. TRG shared the winning car in the GT class. Kevin Buckler's team back for another year with the 71, looking for sponsorship and hoping to run the sports car veteran in the majority of these Sprint Cup races. First lap for Lally 50.44, which is about a second off the pace. He picks it up to a 49.77. Right now he's the slowest of the 11 to take time. But as with all of these first 35 drivers, they are locked into the Daytona 500 based on last year's owner points. Goodyear, the official tire of NASCAR. Everything we've learned making tires for one of racing's most grueling proving grounds inspires what we roll into yours. Goodyear, more driven. Thanks to Goodyear for providing our aerial coverage. Matt?
Mike, coming out of turn 4, Ryan Newman had the lead. It looked like it was going to be his new daughter Brooklyn's first trip to victory lane, and then everything broke loose. Have you had a chance to watch the video back and figure out what you might have been able to do better, or basically you're just sitting duck?
I knew I was a sitting duck. I just didn't know if I was going to be able to unseat what they were trying to do. You know, with Denny, we were protecting the bottom. I didn't know if he was going to try to go high or I was going to think he was going to go high and go low. And when he went low, he kind of, you know, dictated what he was going to do. And I kind of opened the door when I tried to block him for the 22 and the 1 to go around the outside of us. So I was in a good place, just not the best place. And I wouldn't have thought that Kurt was in the best place. I really would have thought Denny was in the best place, but we'll all learn from that. I'm sure I wasn't the only one studying it, so we'll go on. But got to thank the soldiers out there. It was a great run for our U.S. Army Chevrolet today, so a shout out to them. And I guess the 33 kind of spoiled our drama because he went out before us, but I think we are, and we're a pole contending car, and proud to represent the U.S. Army, and all the guys at Stuart Haas did a great job.
Currently holding station on the outside front row. Dick?
23-year-old Stephen Wallace is a guaranteed starter in the Daytona 500. At what age did you think that someday you might run the Great American Race?
Well, let me think. I really started thinking about when I was about 6, but then I got to 8, and I determined I was. So I figured out. But nah, man, we were on a 49.30. We were on a 49.50 in practice, so that was a 2/10 pickup for us, and you know that's really exciting. That's obviously not as fast as we want to be, but you know, we're locked in the race. Times, you know, really doesn't matter to us. I think the car will draft really well. But, man, I just really want to thank 5 Hour Energy and, you know, Aspen Dental for coming on board and make this whole thing possible. And we're going to get back in the garage here, really working on this car and get it ready for racing.
Okay, we wish you well next Sunday. Mike?
Thanks, Dick. Brian Vickers is one of the great stories of this sport. He's a past champion of what's now the Nationwide Series. Ran the first 10 races of last year through Darlington and then had to sit out for a medical issue. The doctors repaired a hole in his heart, got him all tuned up and cleared to race, and he is back. And I think having most of a year off has only made this young man more determined to win.
Stoked to fire.
Yes.
While he was away.
First lap was 49.75, which is back there with what a lot of the Toyota teams run on their first lap. Picks it up to a 49.03, puts him 10th.
Chris Myers.
Mike, guys, best Daytona 500 finish for Vickers, 7th in 2006, but at the age of 27, Mike and the guys referenced, you talk about a comeback. Here's a guy who had heart surgery in July, thankful to be back in a car, but very competitive. What's he going through in this comeback?
Right now, he's like a kid in a candy store. This kid, he lives the life of a daredevil. I mean, he jumps out of airplanes, he flies stunt planes. He loves living on the edge. And the bad thing about it, when he went down last year, I think the whole Red Bull organization went with him. I believe they rally around him, and this year coming back and putting him in this seat along with Casey Kane as his teammate, these guys are going to put on a pretty good show and make a pretty good run for being up in the championship.
Yeah, Vickers tweeted today that he played golf this morning. He's going to run here. He'll drive back to Fort Lauderdale, so he's very relaxed. Meanwhile, Kevin Harvick tweeted today. He said, pretty easy day, Jeff. Probably don't have a pole-winning car, but should be decent.
Well, this is what we've been expecting. We know that Richard Childers Racing, along with ECR engines, you know, Earnhardt Childers engines have been very, very strong at the restrictor plates. And we thought these guys would be challenging. But for some reason, I think his 29 car, a lot like when he won the 500 a couple years ago, is a better race car than it is a qualifying car. And I think Kevin realizes that early on.
And you know, Mike, Joe Girardi, Yankee manager, big race fan, he texted Harvick after Homestead Miami saying he had a great season, but he still couldn't figure out why Harvick didn't win a championship. I think Harvick might be wondering the same about Girardi, but he has his eye in that direction once again.
Kevin Harvick won the regular season last year. He was leading the points after 26 races. He piled up 26 top 10s and wound up a career best 3rd in the chase for the Sprint Cup. When Harvick won the 500, he started 34th. And I think Darrell hit it right on the head during our practice coverage on Speed yesterday. This is not a car that's set up to qualify. This is a car that's set up to win.
Yeah, and you can come down here, and Larry knows this. You come down here with a car that's really slick. It's the least amount of downforce and least amount of drag, and it's going to qualify pretty darn good. When you get in the race like we saw last night and you get cars all around you, that thing's going to be a handful, hard to drive. I believe they compromise with their car when they come. Bring car with little downforce, qualify decent, but race great.
Harvick has the 5th fastest first lap so far.
It looks like he's on track that's about what his second lap is going to be, somewhere right around 5th or 6th. Kevin's a huge Green Bay Packers fan, actually was at the Super Bowl last week out in Dallas.
Yeah, he and Delana, his wife, they love hockey. They go to hockey games, they watch that. Delana's always tweeting about the hockey team.
Well, 5th is where he lands at a 48.71. That's 184.7 miles per hour. Chevrolet is in all the top 5 positions right now. And something's being brought out toward Jamie McMurray's car. Steve?
Mike, that would be a seat insert. You heard Jamie McMurray say that they crashed their Daytona 500 car yesterday. This is a safety precaution. They did pull the car out of line. These seats are made by carbon fiber, but they do have inserts to fit the driver, and they put a brand new one in just actually to accommodate the seat belts.
Well, I think Jamie pretty much mentioned in his interview a while ago how much this team had to go through. Plus, they also had to deal with preparing and racing the Budweiser shootout car last night. So I think with changing the engine this morning, maybe that's the one thing that just kind of slipped through the cracks.
And you do not want to go on the racetrack, even when you're all by yourself and in qualifying race, oh, it'll be okay. You cannot have that attitude. Safety is a top priority all the time. Anytime you get in that race car, everything has to be right. I think it's a great call to put in the car, in the seat, what he needs. Be comfortable and be safe.
McMurray climbing back in. Owner Chip Ganassi looking on, and they're going to get him strapped back in and ready to run as Joey Logano is on track. The youngest driver ever to start a 500 at 18 years, 8 months, and 22 days in 2009. He started 9th that day, finished 43rd. Started 16th in last year's 500. Krista?
Marcus Ambrose is from Tasmania. Is there anything down under that compares to the Daytona 500?
Not compared to last night for that race with the 2x2 deal. That was very entertaining, very different. I'm trying to work out whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, but we're really excited about 2011. We've got a brand new suit on with Stanley on board. We've got a new team back in the Ford Racing family, so I'm really excited. And we're finally here. You know, it's been a really long off season for us, and just can't wait to get started.
We love seeing the smile. Thanks.
Ambrose drove Fords in Australia to the Touring Car Supercar Championship there before coming stateside. Joey Logano at 49.66 on lap 1. That's about middle ground for that first lap.
Based on what we saw in the Budweiser shootout, I think the Joe Gibbs Toyotas in particular, I don't know that they're going to start up near the front in those dual races or in the Daytona 500 next week, but I think they're going to be bad fast in the race.
Logano will start his third 500. Next Sunday, you'll see it live right here on Fox. Kind of a retro paint scheme for Joey Logano, harkening back to the start of Joe Gibbs Racing in the Sprint Cup Series. Checkered flag, 12th for Logano with a 49.12, 183.2. Coming up, David Gilliland, Jamie McMurray, Paul Menard, and Juan Montoya.
Daytona 500 qualifying on Fox is sponsored by Budweiser. Great times are waiting. Grab some buds.
The Chevrolets of Clint Boyer and Ryan Newman currently hold the front row that will be set today for the 500. Here is the Ford of David Gilliland out of Riverside, California. Since the first Daytona 500, only 4 drivers have won the 500 pole on their first try. Gilliland the most recent of those. But today he clocks in 13th at a 49.26, 182.7 miles per hour. Dick?
Put in perspective for us with you, Will Brian Vickers, what it's like to not only beat a life-threatening illness, but also be ready for the Daytona 500.
Is it okay to say I can? I don't know if I can. You know, what I've gone through this past year has been hard and it's been incredible, but I've learned a tremendous amount from it, and very thankful for the experience, and I'm happy to be starting the Daytona 500 again.
We are so glad to have you back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. It is a great story. So much more to be written on Brian Vickers. The other great story of 2010 was this young man from Missouri, Jamie McMurray, a cast-off from Roush Fenway Racing, returned to Chip Ganassi and Felix Sabates, and all he did was win the 2 biggest races of the year, the Daytona 500, the Brickyard 400, and he added the October race at Charlotte for good measure. It was a dream season for McMurray. He did not make the chase for the Sprint Cup, but under this year's rules, which take the top 10 in points and the next 2 drivers in the top 20 who have won the most races, McMurray would have qualified for the chase. So you can point it, you can be one of those Pointer sisters, or you can just go out and win races like McMurray did last year, and you'll be in the chase. He is the defending champion of the Daytona 500, which you will see right here on Fox next Sunday. Pre-race show delivered by Pizza Hut beginning at noon Eastern Time.
You know, the biggest thing about the Daytona 500 is every single year we come down here, and we've been doing it with NASCAR on Fox since 2001. Someone always catches us by surprise, just like Jamie McMurray did last year. Matt Kenseth the year before, Ryan Newman before. If you think about it, the last 10 Daytona 500s, we've had 9 different winners. There's always someone that pops up like a surprise by the time we get down here.
Yeah, they're landmark events. You know, the World Series, the Super Bowl, the Kentucky Derby, and the Daytona 500. It's on the same plateau.
Is it a coincidence that last night the two cars who finished up front in that tandem draft for the last part of that race were owned by two fellas who regularly duke it out in open wheel racing, Roger Penske and Chip Ganassi.
Now, you know, those two guys I think have really worked hard, and we've heard Roger and Chip both say, I'm just trying to establish myself here. They've been here a long darn time. I don't know how long they think it takes, but I think that was another one of those efforts last night. Working together. Look, if one of us can win, it's going to make both of us look good.
Checkered flag for Jamie Mack. 8th quickest, 48.99, 183.6 miles an hour. Krista?
Trevor Bayne getting some advice from Ford driver Greg Biffle, and we know how excited you are to be out here for your first one because you go off 27th, yet I think you were the first driver out here.
I probably was, and I've been made fun of for a lot. I guess I got a lot to learn in the NASCAR world. Had my hard car on earlier, now I'm out here early, and I'm just excited about it. Like you said, I mean, and I like hanging out with my guys here. They're a good group of guys, and we got a good looking car sitting here, and I want to be around it. So just kind of waiting to see how we do here in qualifying. I was kind of surprised Mark Martin didn't get the pole there, so I think it's just a lot of the wind. You know, we'll just kind of, hopefully we get a good draw here on when the wind's blowing and we can get a good run here.
What was the other lesson I gave you a few minutes ago? What should you not call me again?
No more man, but that's just Tennessee, I guess, coming out in me, so that's going to be a hard habit to break there.
That's okay, thank you.
Those boys from Knoxville are so polite. He is a breath of fresh air. He'll be the 20th driver to race in the Daytona 500 for the famed Wood brothers.
I can tell you what, he could be a little bit of a surprise a little bit later on in this qualifying session based on watching those practices yesterday.
And because of that, that's why a little bit of those jitters, you know, probably doing things he never done before, and a shot at qualifying up here in the top 3 or 4 for the Daytona 500. Big step for his young career.
Paul Menard from Wisconsin will race in his 8th Daytona 500 next Sunday. His best finish came here last year, 13th, and he started on the pole for the July race here in 2008. Now this is a big change for Menard. He moves from the Ford at Richard Petty Motorsports to drive a 4th Chevy for Richard Childress this year.
But one thing about it, one good thing about it, he has his crew chief from last year, Slugger Labby. They moved together. They really worked well together last year, had a lot of good runs. Now they've got even more resources and feel like they're in a better position than they were last year. We'll see how he does. He had a pretty good year last year.
You know, it's pretty well documented when you look at most of these Sprint Cup Series drivers. They got their start in racing either in quarter midgets or go-karts, but Paul, being from Wisconsin, began ice racing at the age of 15 and won 10 International Ice Racing Association events, and still goes up there and does it in Wisconsin when his schedule allows.
Yeah, he's got a busy winter schedule. Ice racing, skiing all across America. An avid skier. Came out of Wisconsin late models.
Well, I tell you what, based on that first lap right there at a 49.19, and you look at our tracker right there, he's flirting with it.
Well, that is the fastest first lap by 3/100ths, quicker than Ryan Newman's. And you see the tracker all the way to the left by 3/100ths of a second, 4/100ths. That margin is gaining for Paul Menard. 5. Comes back down a little bit, but here comes Menard, trying to bring that bright yellow car to the finish line and knock Clint Boyer off the pole. He did it.
Yes, sir.
185.4 miles an hour, a lap of 45.538. So by 5/100ths, he takes the pole away from Clint Boyer.
So I would say that if someone said, Paul, do you think that move over to Childress was a good move? Well, it is right now.
And Darrell, what I believe right now, we have 2 RCR cars, still a long way to go, 1 and 2. We've got those 3 Hendrick cars right now, Hendrick affiliated cars, 3rd, 4th, 5th. I think what I saw yesterday in practice, the Hendrick cars were close to maxed out in qualifying trim. I think possibly that the RCR drivers had a little bit laying in the weeds for today.
Yeah, well, I think, Larry, you've said this many times, Childress is kind of that way. He doesn't always put all of his cards on the table until it counts.
Steve?
With Greg Biffle, and Greg, we talk racing, we talk Daytona 500 being a big event. Truthfully, it is. You and your beautiful wife, Nicole, expecting a child. How is life for Greg Biffle right now?
Well, life is great. You know, I got this 3 and Ford Fusion. It's running really good. I got a great team. And, you know, everybody's working hard. The engine shop, Doug Yates, all those guys, Tom Gent. And, you know, we just want to put the 3M car up front. You know, we want to get a top 10 run here. I don't know if we got a chance of the front row, but we'll just have to wait and see what the, you know, the wind and the weather and all those things brings us. But the car's running good. I had a lot of fun last night, so hopefully we can start up front.
And you're having a baby girl, is that correct?
Yep, having a baby girl in July, and, you know, super excited about that.
All right, best of luck.
Thank you.
You could probably put together a top 35 among all the babies that have been born to drivers and crew chiefs over the past 12 months.
Well, that's like I said yesterday, these guys just have a tendency to kind of follow each other. You know, we had a bunch of guys that weren't married, and then they all got married. And then we had a bunch of guys that didn't have a family. Now they're all building families. We had a bunch of guys that didn't like to work out, but they all got trainers and they all watch what they eat, and they're all in great shape this year. So just trends, man. They always talk about trends. We got them.
Juan Pablo Montoya is teammate to Jamie McMurray at Earnhardt Ganassi Racing with Felix Sabates. Has 2 top 10 starts in the 500. Finished 10th last February.
First lap for Juan, 49.31. That's a pretty decent first lap. I don't think it's going to get him up there, you know, on the front row, but that's a decent first lap for this group.
6th quickest first lap so far. All of them turned in by Chevrolets like Montoya's.
You know, Darrell, we were talking about all the drivers, how they stay busy. I don't know that this guy ever quits. He plays golf, he's windsurfing, he flies RC planes, RC helicopters, nonstop.
He tweets all the time, so I follow him on Twitter. And every day he comes in, he's worn out, and he should be, because every day he's been out doing something pretty active.
What was the story we heard that he wanted to bring his big radio control plane up here to Daytona with him, but it wouldn't fit in his jet? So he drove up from Miami with the plane with him. Okay.
That's my,
6th fastest for Montoya.
As my boss would say, that's a really sad story.
No. Big Daddy among those yet to qualify.
Live at Daytona International Speedway and qualifying for next Sunday's Daytona 500, Dale Earnhardt Jr., who was second last year, sat on the pole last night in the Crazy Go Nuts Budweiser shootout. As we check out some cars on the track, along with Jeff Hammond, Chris Myers from the Hollywood Hotel.
Yeah, we're currently right now watching Robert Richardson right now completing his qualifying run, and he moves up to 18th. And Chris, we need to make sure everybody understands we're setting the front row. Everybody else is being, you know, lined up for the 150s, which are the qualifying races to get into the Daytona 500. The only 2 guys that are locked in are your front 2 guys at the end of this qualifying, which are currently Paul Menard and Clint Boyer.
Yeah, and Jeff Gordon coming up in a moment. We'll see him on the track. Speaking of Paul Menard, we have him standing by with our Matt Yoakum.
New number, new colors, Chris, for Paul Menard, currently on the pole. Your teammate, Jeff Burton, still have to go to a few other cars, but you have to be impressed with the debut of this team.
It's unbelievable. To prepare, you know, for this race, for Phoenix, for Vegas, we're so far ahead of the curve right now, and you know, Slugger and the boys, you know, just gave me an awesome race car today. Jeff's going to be fast. A couple of the Hendrick cars are going to be fast. Probably going to be a Chevrolet on, you know, on the front row, and just excited.
Good luck.
Thank you,
Mike.
Thanks, Matt. That is about as excited as Paul Menard ever sounds. But he's a very composed young man, and he can drive a race car.
Really, really laid back, low key.
Regan Smith came across the nose of Carl Edwards, the gold car, who tipped Dale Jr., who started a whole bunch of them spinning. Midway in last night's Budweiser shootout. A tough night for the Syracuse native, who got engaged the day after Thanksgiving to a young lady who is a middle school science teacher.
Was pretty impressed with that, because I was talking to his dad and mom, Ron and Lee Smith, and they said, you know, Regan's 27 years old, but still, before he asked Megan to marry him, he went to Megan's daughter, or to Megan's father, and asked for her hand in marriage, and I thought that was pretty impressive.
Speaking of marriage, a wedding in the Waltrip household. A wonderful affair in Nashville.
Yeah, thank you guys for being there too. It meant a lot, and a beautiful wedding. Jessica Lee and Fausto Rocha, and talking about and asking to marry. Fausto and I go play golf, And he's a great little golfer. We play a couple of holes, and he's shanking them, he's chili dipping them. I mean, he's all over the place. I said, son, what's wrong with you anyway? And he said, there's something I need to ask you. I need to talk to you about. And so once he got that out of the way, he went back to being a scratch golfer.
Birdied the next 2 or 3 holes, didn't he?
So the day of the wedding, we were going to go out to the golf course and play around the golf to celebrate where he asked for her hand in marriage. It was really sweet.
Regan Smith, Rookie of the Year in 2008, 29th in the standings last year. Had 2 12th place finishes. And that double yellow line is kind of a credit to Regan Smith, who battled Tony Stewart at Talladega and had what a would-be win taken away for going beneath the line to complete the pass. That is out of bounds in NASCAR racing at Daytona and Talladega.
I guess all of us have an opinion about that yellow line rule. We all know why it's there, and certainly probably has saved more wrecks than we all even imagined. But man, I'd just like to see on the last lap coming down that last off turn 4 of this line down here, just let them race. Have at it, boys.
11th fastest for Regan Smith. Dick Bergman.
With Juan Pablo Montoya, you raced last night in the shootout. Saw the thing where you've got one driver right behind another. Will we see a lot of that in the Daytona 500?
I think we have to. I think, be honest with you, I think this target shape is pretty good. We got a very good race car. Yesterday we had a lot of bad luck. We were in the middle of that wreck. We're actually in the tail end of that wreck. I saw it happening, and you just kind of don't have anywhere to go. So it kind of sucks. But I think we'll be pretty good. I think we got a good race car, and yeah, it depends. I think NASCAR wants to tweak the rules a little bit for the next couple of races, so we'll see what happens.
Okay, thanks, Juan. The Colombian, a star in IndyCar and Formula One, and certainly a contender here in NASCAR. Greg Biffle, the Biff, hard charger, and last year was rewarded with a couple of wins, Pocono and Kansas. Winding up 6th in the chase for the Sprint Cup, was in the top 12 in points all season long. Last year at Daytona, his Roush Fenway Ford time trialed 3rd fastest.
And should we forget that he was actually leading the Daytona 500 at mile marker number 500, but because we did go into overtime, a couple of green-white checkers, ended up finishing 3rd.
Biffle won the pole for the 500 in 2004.
Saw his car owner Jack Roush there just a second ago. Of course, had that really, really horrible plane crash back in the summer, and was back at the racetrack shortly after that.
A bad crash, but both he and his companion walked away, landing at Oshkosh, Wisconsin during the experimental aircraft event. A landing crash that Jack said was due to crowding on the approach, and a plane that wasn't able to get out of the way as he was coming in to land. He is flying again, however. And that's great news, and his return to the track really rallied his troops. Biffle won again, and Carl Edwards won the last 2 of the season. That is about the 8th or 9th fastest first lap for Greg Biffle.
And this is the 2nd Roush Fenway car to go out. Matt Kenseth went out earlier in that 17 car, and their first lap almost a mirror of each other. 8 1/1000ths difference between Kenseth's first lap and Greg Biffle's first lap. We felt like the Ford camp probably wouldn't have anything for the Chevrolets as far as the pole of the front row, but Darrell and I were talking earlier. We felt like 1 or 2 of them would crack up there in the top 10, especially that little Trevor Bayne.
Yeah, looking for that 21 car, see how he does. I think that's going to be the benchmark based on what we saw in practice.
There's a strong pickup for Biffle. Who
pretty good right there.
48-67, Greg. That's 5th right there, right now.
That's stout. Good run. They were having a little vibration problem yesterday. Looked like they got that all fixed up, because that's a pretty good run right there.
I believe the cat in the hat was happy with that lap.
Biffle is the fastest of the 4 Fords that have run thus far. Krista?
AJ Allmendinger and I discussing another word that begins with A, adjectives for the Bud Shootout and the craziness we saw looking ahead. What are we going to see in the Daytona 500?
It was a little crazy. And then, because I sat up right up there, up in one of the suites with the people, hanging out with them, seeing what they thought. Honestly, I was a little confused by it, because I'm not. It's
just crazy. It's something that we've never seen. Obviously, a lot of people are saying that. Don't know really what to think of how the race is going to play out. Obviously, the 2 cars hooking up is going to be the big deal, but man, I don't know. I sat there kind of with my mouth open the whole time, kind of like, okay, what's going to happen next? So it was a lot of fun to watch. Hopefully, I'm going to go start sweet talking some drivers in the driver owner lot right now, make some friends. I was already telling Jeff, nobody helped him last night. I'll help him in the 500. So it was crazy, but you know, I think the Best Buy Ford, not going to be the fastest thing. I am going to try to hold it wide open in qualifying. I haven't done that yet. I'm going to try that, but probably won't be on pole, but I think with all that Doug Yates horsepower, it's going to be fast in the race.
Go for it.
Thanks, Krista. Don't make any old age jokes about Jeff Gordon. Yes, he's sponsored by the AARP. You get the solicitations in the mail if you're 50 or older, but he is ready to race and ready to win another championship this year. Last year, 9th in the standings, his 16th top 10 performance in the last 17 years, but he was in contention to win 4 races this year. He has a new crew chief this season, and he has what I believe is the longest tenure driving the same car of any driver here at Daytona. He's been behind the wheel of Rick Hendricks, number 24, here since 1993.
I believe he's fixing to lay us down a pretty good first lap in his 24 car, it looks like. 48.91, and that's on lap 1, Darrell.
It's a good lap right
What
there.
a lap.
That lap is the 11th fastest lap of the day, and it's only his first lap.
You know, funny quick story. Of course, we know he got into the scuffle with Jeff Burton at the Texas race.
He likes it.
He does like that. But when he got home that night late, his daughter Ella, 3 years old, looked at him and said, "Papa, were you wrestling with another man today?" He said, "Yeah, and Papa shouldn't have been doing that, but I was a little upset."
Here he comes, and this, by more than 1/10 of a second, could take the pole away from Paul Menard.
Here, water 240.
Jeff Gordon looking for his second Daytona 500 pole. He's on top. 48.396.
Stout.
More than 1/10 of a second past her.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'd say so.
So good.
Really stout.
They're awesome. Well,
Big Daddy is a happy guy. Jeff Gordon vaults to the pole. Jeff Gordon has just taken the pole from Paul Menard. Those 2 Chevys currently hold the front row. New crew chief Alan Gustafson and Jeff celebrating what was a tremendous run. 14/100ths quicker than Menard.
Guess who had what crew chief had the pole last year here?
Alan Gustafson with Mark. Dick?
Hey, Jeff Gordon, brand new crew chief, a very fast car. You guys are clicking or what?
Things are clicking. You know, I'm so proud of these guys. I mean, I know everybody talks about how hard you work, but these guys just pay so much attention to detail, and that's why they've been on the front row here the last couple of years. I just get the pleasure of driving it, and really excited about this entire season and the drive-in hunger Chevrolet. So
you're going to win the Daytona 500 to start it off?
Well, we saw last night you can't predict what's going to happen in this kind of draft session, and it's going to be interesting, but boy, it sure does make it nice to have a good starting position, and I hope we can maintain one here.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Nice run.
And having a new crew chief won't slow you down. 4 of the last 5 Daytona 500 winners had a new crew chief from the previous season. Marcus Ambrose, the first of the 2 Richard Petty Motorsports cars that will qualify back-to-back. 9th fastest for Ambrose with a 48.71. Krista?
Dale Jr. standing by his race car, and before the Bud Shootout, you said, I don't know what to expect. So after the Bud Shootout, what surprised you most about last night?
I think that we all didn't know whether we would be in the little 2-car packs from the very start to finish, and so we just all kind of wondered how that was going to work out. But it was pretty fun. I mean, anytime you're out there racing, you're having a good time, and we're just hopefully we can find a little more speed.
Did you see what your teammate just did?
Yeah, I mean, Hendrick, they build awesome motors, and they got great fabricators. I mean, these cars are plenty capable of being on the pole. They were last year, and so that's good. Hopefully we can get enough out of our car to give him a run. Want to thank Amp Energy, Mountain Dew, and National Guard, and all our sponsors. And it's just an easy day, man. Wish they were all kind of like this, but we'll see what we can run and get ready for the qualifying races.
Thanks, Dale. I'm glad he says it's easy. There's no way I could do it, Mike.
Well, 2 laps and go to the beach. I mean, Dale Jr. is 4 cars away from making his qualifying run. Fox Fantasy Auto Racing is back on FoxSports.com. Pick 5 racing stars to compete each week of the season. Compete in groups with your friends or other racing fans. Are you up for the racing challenge? Go to FoxSports.com/fantasy.
Mike, what's not easy? Talking about being easy. When a driver is really excited and up, he's got to act like he's not. When the driver's not up and not really into it, he's got to act like he is. So it's kind of a role the driver has to play. You don't want to be, you kind of want to hit it right in the middle. And that's hard to do.
But he definitely has to be a cheerleader a lot of times when that team is maybe a little bit down, no question.
A car number that's been to victory lane in the 507 times with Stock Car Racing's king, Richard Petty, at the wheel. This is the Richard Petty Motorsports number 43 for A.J. Allmendinger, who finished 3rd in his first Daytona 500 in 2009.
There's no question when AJ went to drive for Richard Petty Motorsports that you could almost see that Richard Petty somewhat wrapped his arm around AJ Allmendinger, kind of like, this is my boy right here. And they did have a little bit of a huge powwow in the garage area at the 4th of July race last year. Got a little heated there for a little bit.
When you said he wrapped his arms around him, you weren't lying.
Well, I think he was pointing his finger at him that
that
night.
big old long index, that ET index finger poking him in the chest. I don't think AJ took kindly to that.
First lap complete for Allmendinger, 22nd at a 49.53. Now you see where that line is on our Fox tracker, and that will stay there to indicate the first lap. Of particular interest is going to be that number backgrounded in blue, which is the difference. Plus means slower than the fastest qualifier. A minus would be quicker. You have speed, you have RPM, you have over here where he would place if that lap would end right at this moment. It's a dynamic tracker, and there's a lot going on there, but all the information you need to follow your favorite driver is right there.
Looks like he may end up being just a little bit slower than his teammate Marcus Ambrose in the 9 car that was just out a second ago. Marcus is 9. Looks like AJ's going to end up about 11th.
48.83, 184.29 miles an hour. Allmendinger has the 3rd fastest Ford so far. Let's go to the mayor, or is it the senator of the garage area? Let's go to Krista.
Thanks, Mike. Well, last night, Jeff Burton, you told me that you learned more in that first 25 laps of that shootout than you'd learned in all the days of testing. I know it didn't turn out the way you wanted. What gave?
We really don't know. We had Clint behind me pushing like heck, but we just couldn't go anywhere. I think that as the speed picked up, certainly it seemed like some people had got their rev chips pulled out, and we didn't get ours pulled out. And that obviously was part of it. But to be quite honest, I mean, Clint was there pushing all he could. We just couldn't make any lap time. So I really don't know. I said when we get a chance to win races this year, we're going to win them. We ain't giving them away, and we feel like we gave the first one away, so we'll have to redeem ourselves.
Well, I'm going to let you choose something right now. Better nickname for you, the mayor or the senator? What would you rather be called?
Whichever one has the less people calling and complaining, that's the one I want. So either one of those probably won't work.
I was going to say politics is bad then. Thanks, Jeff.
See, he's such a politician. And one of the sharpest minds in the garage area.
Yes. I was going to say, that's not the answer I was expecting from him.
Yeah, well, you know what happened? You gave him an option. You can't be one or the other. You got to.
When he hangs up his helmet, if he doesn't run for public office, I'll be surprised.
I agree.
David Reagan, driving for Jack Roush and John Henry, another Roush Fenway Ford for the second generation driver from Georgia. This will be David's 5th Daytona 500. In his debut in 2007, he finished 5th.
Yeah, the carburetor restrictor plate tracks for David Reagan, whether it be here at Daytona or Talladega, definitely has been one of his strong suits.
Now, he's a racing conglomerate. He owned a car in yesterday's ARCA race. He owns a Legends car racing team. got his hands in the careers of a lot of up-and-coming drivers.
Yeah, and he'll tell you a little bit about Bill Elliott's son Chase too, because Chase smoked him off over there in one of those late model races that I think it was Lanier back a couple of weeks ago.
All right, let's get out and visit with the 5-time and defending Sprint Cup champion.
A big bounce in his step here on the grid, especially after seeing his teammate Jeff Gordon put the 24 machine on the pole. Threat to knock him off, or at least make it an all Hendrick front row?
Man, I really hope so. Where the 5 was, confused me, and then I saw the 24 to the top, so I'm not sure if the 24 found something or if the 5 lost something. But we're going to find out, and I think either way we'll have a respectable starting position. That's all that matters.
Thanks, Jimmy.
You got it. Thank you.
How important is this day? 9 times the Daytona 500 has been won from the pole, and 16 times from the front row.
Just goes to show you, if you've got a fast race car, it'll work on both Sundays, qualifying day and the Daytona 500.
Pretty much always been my theory, and I think most guys will tell you, what can you do to help me on a track like this? Give me a fast car.
There you go.
The 2 fastest qualifiers today will start from the front row in the Great American Race next Sunday. Everyone will start one of the Gatorade dual races on Thursday, and that's where the rest of the field will be set. Now, when we get outside the top 35 to what would normally be knockout qualifying, 3 of those drivers will know that they will be in the 500, and the others will have to try to race their way in.
Of all the years I've been coming here, I don't think I've ever heard a driver, people say, practice and the qualifying races and everything that we do. Why do you do all that? I don't believe I've ever had a driver say, or heard a driver say, I'm happy with my car, don't touch it. You're always trying to tweak it a little bit more, make it a little bit better, make it faster, make it handle better, make it do something that it's not.
David Reagan, 11th fastest at a 48.75 as last night's winner Kurt Busch talks it over with Joe Nemechek. Goodyear, more driven. If it looks like 1976, don't be surprised. The red, white, and gold of the Wood brothers, who have 3 poles in the Daytona 500, and they have a hot young shoe behind the wheel. Trevor Bayne, 19 years old, the youngest driver trying to attempt the Daytona 500 this year. Perhaps Ford's best hope for the pole in the 500. He's on his 2nd lap. The first one was about 8th fastest overall. He is going to be close. 2nd for Trevor Bayne. He puts a Ford on the front row for now with a 48.53.
Oh my!
6 1/1000ths faster than Paul Menard.
I tell you, that's
believe
a
that?
great effort by Trevor Bayne.
That first lap, I said, oh, he's not good. He's not.
Awesome job. I don't know if we'll stay there, but y'all are awesome.
And guess what?
That was a huge pickup over lap 1.
That's what I said that first lap. I said, well, they really fooled themselves. But man, watch these guys. Most likely that was the tire guy.
Or maybe the engine guy.
Or maybe the engine guy. It was not the crew chief. That's Donnie Wingo.
Well, Trevor Bayne's in good company. Cale Yarborough, A.J. Foyt, and David Pearson all won poles for the 500 for the Wood brothers. What a run for this youngster from Tennessee.
And he's scheduled to run about 17 or 18 races for the Wood brothers, unless they possibly think they can get more sponsorship.
They've won it 4 times with Tiny Lund, with Cale, with Foyt, and with Pearson in that famous finish with Richard Petty from 1976. Dale Earnhardt Jr. qualified on the front row for the 500 in 2003 and 2010. He started top 10 in all but 1 of his starts in the 500. 6 Daytona victories in the Nationwide Series. He won the 500 in 2004. 3 dual qualifying races. 3 Nationwide races on Saturday and 2 Budweiser shootouts.
We've just seen a very upbeat Dale Earnhardt Jr. throughout the testing in January, throughout the entire speed weeks, and he said, you know, with the right formula, the right chemistry, and good communication, I feel like without a doubt I can get back to where I was when I was winning races and competitive driving at DEI.
You can't hang around Stevie Letarte and not be pumped up. That guy is always up, and I've said it over the whole week we've been here. I think that's a great marriage right here. I think it's going to be a good combination. I think those two guys are going to really be good for each other.
22nd on the first lap, 49.06.
That's the second quickest.
Yes.
That's a good
second quickest first lap.
Think about Trevor Bayne was 49.30 on his first lap.
And look at the differential right on it, right on pole speed. So Junior trying to knock that Ford off the front row and set up there with his teammate Jeff Gordon.
And I'm going to tell you what I think even makes this a really good lap. When his teammate Jeff Gordon qualified, the American flag we watched that gives us a good indicator of the wind was laying straight down. Now actually Dale Earnhardt Jr. is having to fight a pretty good headwind down that back straightaway.
Good numbers. Like
it's going to be close.
It's going to be right on it.
Gordon's lap of 48.396. Junior.
Do it.
Yes.
First. 48.364. 22 1,000.
I think Junior Nation came to life.
22 1,000ths of a second. Excuse me, 32 1,000ths of a second. Separate Dale Jr. and Jeff Gordon. And two of Rick Hendrick's cars right now are on the front row.
And I think his two biggest bullets will be, there's his crew chief, Steve Letarte. That whole team was with Jeff Gordon last year. And now they're with Dale Earnhardt Jr. But I think the two biggest bullets will be the other Richard Childress car, Jeff Burton, coming up here shortly, and then his teammate, Jimmy Johnson.
Dick Berggren.
With 19-year-old Trevor Bayne now third quick so far this afternoon, what did you do behind the wheel to help your run?
I prayed a lot before I got in the car, first of all. And, you know, really as a driver, you just got to make sure that you don't scrub any speed. You got to hold the wheel as steady as you possibly can. A lot of teams run a manual box here, so that actually helps you stay steady, even though it's a lot of different wheel input. And then just make sure you can get as high as possible that first lap and as low as possible the second lap. You know, I think we had an awesome run there. I mean, I cannot thank this whole team enough. To be third right now is great because we're sitting behind Dale Jr. and Jeff Gordon. So we'll take that and we'll go to these twins. And I think hopefully these guys will see that we've got a good race car driver and hopefully they'll know I can do it and they'll want to work with us and we can get us a good starting spot in the 500.
Great job. Matt?
Thanks, sir. Kurt Busch started the night as a Lone Ranger and ended the night with a big check of $200,000 for taking home the Budweiser Shootout win. So has McMurray invoiced you yet for his participation?
I'm sure he will. It's just an unbelievable experience to be in that two-car draft, and you got to have that buddy with you. And he stuck with us. My plan was to try to get to the 39 and the 11 sooner to give us a better shot at things, and ultimately it worked out in my favor. But all along I wanted to get McMurray up there and have us duke it out for the win, and for him to get second, it all worked out. I'm just excited. I mean, it's just a great way to start off a great relationship with Shell and Pennzoil, of course being the only Dodge out there. But great partners like AAA with Coca-Cola and all these guys helping us out just to start off on this high. It's good. So we hope to keep it going all here through Speed Weeks.
And Mikey said going from turn 4 to start finish, he gained about $150,000 from third to first.
I'd say so. Wow. Jeff Burton is on track right now, and he should be one of the contenders. The pole winner for the 500 in 2006. But Burton right now is tracking 10th fastest as he comes off the corner, picking it up to 9th.
Just keeps gaining a little bit and a little bit as he came off down that back straightaway.
You know, real quickly, following up on Trevor Bayne talking about having manual steering on his car. Power steering pump probably doesn't pull over 2 or 3 horsepower at the most. But that's how critical 2 or 3 horsepower are. You'll unhook that power steering and go to an old manual steering box like an old pickup truck or something I have on it. Got to crank on a little bit more, but takes a little bit of horsepower.
Jeff Burton continued to gain speed all the way to the finish line and is 6th at the moment at a 48.63. That's 185.0 miles per hour. Dick?
With Dale Earnhardt Jr., how'd that car feel on that run?
Pretty easy. I don't know, 185 ain't too hard at this place, especially with the new asphalt. But I want to thank Hendrick Engines and the guys in the fabrication department
all the guys in the 48-88 shop.
But how about the driver? Can this driver win the Daytona 500 next Sunday?
About 30 of us can. Hopefully I make all the right moves, man. We got a long week, but I'm real proud of the speed we had today. I want to thank everybody that worked on the car. It was all race car today.
Good start. Steve?
Dick, David Reagan's been visiting with the fans. Your dad raced here in the Daytona 500. Kevin Harvick says this is our biggest race times 10. Can you tell the fans, the viewers, what it's like to get ready for the Daytona 500?
Yeah, I mean, this is such a big event, and it's not only the the kickoff of our 2011 season. It kind of is a tone setter for the rest of the year. But the Daytona 500. You think about the birthplace of NASCAR and racing just down the road on the beach, and then over here, and so many legends that have won the race and not only won but participated, and obviously the new track surface. There's a lot of neat things happening here. I went up top yesterday for the ARCA race, and just looking down on the speedway kind of gives you chill bumps. You're like, man, this place is awesome. So it's a Daytona 500. Our UPS car is pretty fast, and looking forward to being back down here next week.
Well, Krista, David Reagan making a lot of new fans, talking to some of the kids down here hanging by the fence.
Well, kids love Carl Edwards because he's all about traditions. First it was the backflip, now it's running into the stands. What kind of things do you have planned for the 2011 season?
Probably a lot of what we just talked about, changing diapers and things like that.
That is what we were talking about.
Seems to be taking over my life. But, hopefully I've got a lot of victories to celebrate, and hopefully we can do backflips and go up in the stands. I had so much fun doing that at the end of the year. Our Aflac team is geared up, hopefully, to make a run at this championship. We had fun at the end of the season. I'm ready to get going racing.
All right. Thanks, Carl.
Thanks, Krista. David Rudiman on track for Michael Waltrip Racing. Rudiman was one of last year's most successful restrictor plate races. In the 4 events at Daytona and its sister track Talladega, Rudiman had the 3rd best average finish behind 2 of Richard Childress's drivers.
Which tells me David Rudiman did probably the best job of a lot of drivers staying out of trouble at those 4 races.
First lap for Rudiman, 49.50. That's about 15th quickest first lap.
He's a car owner. Yeah, he's the car owner for his dad, Buzzy.
Hall of Fame dirt track driver.
Been having a rough go of it. Talking to David, said they'd blown an engine, flipped a car. But Buzzy keeps crawling out and say, well, you got a good backup.
You saw David is from Zephyr Hills, Florida, down in the southern part of the state, and he was a dirt track racer. And David said earlier in the week, it wasn't that many years ago, I was sitting in the stands here as a fan, and all I thought about was just trying to get in the garage area to see some drivers. Never dreamed about racing in the Daytona 500.
Rudiman had 9 top 10s last year and clocks in 17th, 48.90. He is the fastest Toyota with a lap of 184.0 miles per hour. Jeff Burton climbing out after his run. Gives the parade float wave.
Looked like a political wave. He's going to have to make a choice, senator or mayor.
Jimmy Johnson, Kurt Busch talk it over. Speaking of that, NASCAR's losing one of its biggest supporters in the United States Senate. Want to say hi to John Kyle from Arizona. I'm pretty sure he's watching because he is an avid NASCAR fan, probably the biggest one on Capitol Hill. Our coverage of Daytona Speed Weeks continues next weekend. 2 sessions of Sprint Cup Series practice on speed, followed by the Camping World Truck Series. Then next Saturday, it's the final session of Sprint Cup practice on speed. And next Sunday begins with NASCAR Race Day on speed. And then the 53rd running of the Daytona 500 on Fox, followed by NASCAR Victory Lane on speed to wrap it all up. Our coverage of Daytona Speed Weeks leading up to the Daytona 500 continues next weekend on Speed and on Fox.
I couldn't help but halfway listen to Kurt Busch and Jimmy Johnson here, still talking about the Budweiser shootout last night.
Committed to leaving a lane down there for it.
Yeah, you're right.
If it was me, I'd have gone down there.
Been trying to dodge the side.
I'd have held it right on that double yellow. And I said, whoever's coming is coming. It worked He was trying to get away from the side track.
I think what they're talking about is, after looking at that replay a couple of times, I'm not sure that Denny Hamlin even had to go below the yellow line.
Well,
and I think that's what I heard Kurt say. If he'd have just stayed on the yellow line, held his position right here, if he'd have just held right there, he wouldn't even have to go below the yellow line.
I see Ryan crowding him just a little bit.
A little bit, but there was still no reason for him to drop all the way down under the yellow line. I think he could have just stayed right beside him and maybe have won the race.
But as Hamlin said, it wasn't worth causing a big wreck. Not on the week before the Daytona 500.
I think if I were looking at that and I was driving that 11 car, I'd have said, man, I don't think I should have gone down below that yellow line. I had enough room to make it.
Carl Edwards, winner of the last 2 races of last season, becoming the highest placed Ford driver in the chase for the Sprint Cup, where he wound up 4th. Just the kind of rebound the Roush Fenway needed to propel them toward 2011.
Now, the fastest Roush Fenway car is actually Greg Biffle in the 16 car right now. He's 9th.
A couple years ago, Carl had a bit part, a walk-on in the Fox Show 24, and had such a good time with the crew, and they wrote in some speaking lines for him. Well, now he's going to play Confederate General John B. Gordon in the HBO miniseries To Appomattox, about the final days of the Civil War.
Wow.
Oh, we got senators, we've got actors, we got it all covered.
We got it all.
There's some drivers in there somewhere. A few of them.
When they have time.
Yeah, work that into your schedule.
Does this mean we have to call him the General, or can we stick with Cousin Carl?
I like Cousin Carl. He's been Cousin Carl ever since I met him.
Just it's stuck with him.
Well, Kenny Schrader, that's how he introduced Carl to all of us back when Carl first showed up. He said, this Cousin Carl from up in Missouri.
You know, Carl, what he loves to do during the off season is go and see in different cultures and different things. And he does it in a unique way. In fact, this past off season, he spent 2 weeks touring Vietnam on a bicycle.
I just thought about something I said about that 11 car.
Yeah.
I make that decision on a replay.
On the replay, yes, yes.
I don't know what I'd have done if I'd have been coming out at 2:05.
Or here about 18 hours later.
Carl was Fox's guest at the Pro Bowl in Hawaii a few weeks ago. 15th will be his qualifying effort, 48.78, and that is right in the midst of all the Fords.
Yep, we got a Ford that's 9th, 12th, 14th, 15th, 16th, and 17th.
Matt?
And catching up with 3-time Daytona 500 champion. You got a lot going on in your world, and I think now number 11 on the New York Times bestseller list.
Yeah, in the blink of the eye has gone really well. It's a fun project for me to work my way through and sort of understand more about what happened in 2001, and then tell the story about who showed up in Daytona in 2001. The loser of 462 races, why that guy felt like he could win that day, and the keys to me winning, and then of course all that taking a backseat to the tragedy that happened on the last lap. It's a crazy book.
All right, well, good luck this weekend as he gets ready for the Daytona 500. Going for number 4. 4 rings. That's right.
Michael Waltrip will run a couple of Sprint Cup races this year in addition to running his race team.
And no matter
all the racetrack, my friend, all the racetrack.
That's the voice of Chad Knaus, crew chief for Jimmy Johnson, who will be the next car to roll.
And what he's telling him, use all the racetrack, get as high and as close to that wall as you can on this coming to get the green or the white flag lap.
We call him 5-time. He's done what no one has done in the history of NASCAR. 5 straight championships. His 17 top 5 finishes last year led the league. And he has been unstoppable in championship form. A win in the Daytona 500, 2 poles, including his rookie season of 2002.
And I said it last night, I'll say it again. This guy is, he is the benchmark. When it comes to being focused, committed, resolved, everything that you'd want a guy to be if you were working with him. That makes you a champion. And I think other drivers are starting to look at Jimmy and say, what is he doing that I'm not?
Maybe it's what he's not doing. He's not racing in the Nationwide or the Truck Series. He doesn't have dirt late models. He concentrates 100% on his cup racing and his family.
I told him, I said, I think you need to look at what your assets are. And your asset is, I'm able to focus, I'm single-minded, I do one thing, and I do it really, really well.
You know, the other thing that intrigued me that he told us, he said, yeah, there's a lot of times he'd love for his race car to feel more comfortable, but he has learned when you make it more comfortable, it's not going to go as fast. And he does not want to slow his race car down.
We thought last year Johnson would be vulnerable. With Shani expecting their first child, you know what the arrival of a baby does to your concentration and especially your sleep patterns, but Johnson was unwavered and drove to a 5th straight title. First lap, 49.30. That will put him in the top 10 just barely of first laps.
Yeah, that's a little bit off of what Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Jeff Gordon, his 2 teammates, ran on their first lap.
But that's about what Trevor Brain ran on his first lap. So we've seen some big pickups.
See right there, right now, he's tracking about 12th, 11th or 12th.
I think these guys had a little concern, though, Larry, about the speed they had in their car. They tested down here. They didn't have the fastest car. Went home and built a new one.
Yep. Speed comes up a little off turn 4. He gains about 4 miles an hour to the flag, but Johnson will have to settle for 14th and get his starting spot on Thursday in the Gatorade Duel. We love to bring out new technology to help you better understand what's going on with these drivers and with these cars. And we're going to show you our ghost car image of Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Jeff Gordon. Do not adjust your set, but we've superimposed one over the other to show the line and the relative position all the way around on the money lap. You see right there, Junior at turn 2, half a car length better than Jeff Gordon. Back straight away, that margin increases just a little bit. Their lines, Darrell, almost identical.
Perfectly. Junior went in a little bit wider into turn 1, but here they're right on the money, right together. See Jeff's car pushes up. That's scrubbing a little speed off. Junior's is right around the bottom. You see that Gordon's car goes to the outside and moves up the track a little bit, but immediately right back down. But that moving around, up a little, down a little, is the difference.
And right now, the front row differential is just about 3/4 of a car length,
which equates to 3/100ths of a second.
And I'd say most of that, it appeared to be, came in turn 3 and 4. Jeff's car looked like it went up the hill a little bit, and it really went up a little off of 4.
No shit, man. No shit.
That was a cool graphic, or whatever you call that.
Animation.
That was very
I
cool.
like that.
Very cool.
The ghost lap. Dale Jr. currently on pole for the Daytona 500. If this holds, it would be the 3rd front row sweep for Rick Hendrick, who in 1989 had Ken Schrader and Darrell on the front row, and last year Mark Martin and Dale Jr. Kurt Busch in 2010, 2 victories, Atlanta and Charlotte, making the chase and winding up 11th for car owner Roger Penske. Busch is a 3-time runner-up in 10 Daytona 500 appearances. Finally got his first restrictor plate win ever last night in the Bud Shootout.
He and Steve Addington, I mean, man, they came out of the box looking pretty darn good. Like you said, you won Atlanta and went to Charlotte, won both races at Charlotte. And from there on, though, Larry, it's like something happened. They kind of fell off the map. Didn't get that kind of performance the second half of the year.
Yeah, it's almost like when they won both races at Charlotte Motor Speedway in May. That's when they kind of lost it. They got a little bit back maybe in the fall, but most of the summer months was quite dismal for Kurt Busch and that group.
Spent Wednesday at the drag strip testing his NHRA Pro Stock Dodge. He's going to run the Winter Nationals at Gainesville on the off weekend in March.
You know what? I really think there might even be a method to that madness. You think about the restarts we have to put up every week. These green-white checkers, and how many races we've seen won on who can get the best restart on some of those last 2-lap shootouts. Working on your reaction time and your restarts is not a bad thing these days.
Definitely not. 30th on the first lap for Kurt Busch. 49.47, which is top 20 territory. He could be the fastest Dodge. It's between he and Brad Keselowski, his teammate, and they're about tenth and a half apart on their first lap.
Yeah, if Kurt indeed qualifies for that NHRA event, he will join Richard Petty and John Andretti as the only other two NASCAR drivers to actually race in the NHRA.
That's right. Richard did a season of drag racing when Dodge was unhappy with NASCAR's rules. He took a little car called the 43 Junior in Petty Blue and went drag racing with it for most of a season.
It's going to be a great run for this Dodge, this 22 car of Kurt Busch.
11th for last night's winner of the Bud Shootout, Kurt Busch.
Good speed.
Third fastest, the rookie, 19-year-old Trevor Bayne. Jeff Gordon, currently the runner-up, and right now on pole, Dale Jr.
We welcome you back live to the Daytona International Speedway and pole qualifying for next Sunday's Daytona 500. You'll see it at noon Eastern here on Fox. Jeff Hammond, Chris Myers, and right now, Jeff, an impressive front row of Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Jeff Gordon, a couple of guys trying to end losing streaks. 93 races for Earnhardt Jr., 65 for Jeff Gordon, as we get a check of Robbie Gordon going around the track.
And the thing was, I mean, Rick Hendrick's got to be excited about the switch he made with the crew chiefs, helping these drivers, and the drivers responding. And was that ghost car not one of the coolest things you've seen? Because I know as a former crew chief, that would help me understand where my car got beat and what I might need to work on to make it better for my driver. Because you're always wondering, where did you lose that little bit of speed that could have put you on the pole?
Yeah, and how does the ghost car, how does it help fans sometimes get an understanding of how important, when you, like Darrell was talking about, taking a corner, losing it, you lose a little bit of speed if you get outside instead of hugging the line.
You talk about how you turn the wheel and how the car handles and how the car yaws out. All these things are so important to a driver. And we talk about a driver, the importance of what he does behind the wheel. I think you could finally get an illustration of how Earnhardt's line and how good he was, you know, really helped pay off for him in the end. Holding that line as tight around the racetrack as possible. As we take a look at Robbie Gordon, he currently winds up being 31st at about 182 miles an hour in that new Dodge of his.
Who's a threat of those remaining to maybe knock Dale Jr. out of the top spot?
You know, the one guy we better not overlook has to be the man who set one of the fastest laps here, and that's Bill Elliott in that Phoenix Racing 09 car, because they have been good in practice, and Bill knows how to run those smooth lines around here, and that's also one of those cars that's still got Hendrick power under the hood, so don't overlook him.
All right, and let's check in with Chris Devotis. She's with Denny Hamlin.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, and want to talk about his new business partner, Denny Hamlin, now teamed up with Michael Jordan. Turn around. Show us the Jordan logo on the fire suit. There you go. Did your business partner call you last night and talk to you about that move you made on the racetrack?
No, but plenty of people on Twitter did, that's for sure. But, you know, it's just one of those things. It's a learning experience for everyone last night. Everyone that was in that race, it was a different type of racing for sure. So for me, I might stick to my guns, say, you know, I was past them before I went below the yellow line, but, you know, the rules are you can't go down there. So for me, it wasn't worth wrecking all four cars, and more than likely that's what would have been the outcome if I had stayed on the racetrack.
Thanks, Denny.
And let's not forget, folks, Denny Hamlin won the Budweiser Shootout in his rookie year. He is no stranger to victory lane here at Daytona. Spoiler check going on Hamlin's car.
And make sure each driver that goes out that the angle in that spoiler is the same 70 degrees.
And it's got adjusters on the back there that's how they stand it up or let it down. Most time stand it up a little bit more.
Martin Truex Jr. won the pole for the 500 2 years ago. Last year moved over to Michael Waltrip Racing and finished 6th in the 500 in his debut for that team. That's his best Daytona finish in 11 starts.
And I would say of all the drivers that made changes for 2010, this is probably one of the ones that ended up being the disappointed the most. Just always seemed like Martin was at the wrong place at the wrong time, and had the crew chief over there with him, Pat Tryson, that came from Penske, and so they want to put 2010 behind them and get 2011 up and going.
The silver lining in that cloud was Martin's younger brother, Ryan Truex, who also came to Michael Waltrip Racing and won NASCAR's Camping World East Championship for them.
We know that Martin certainly loves the outdoors, fishing and hunting, and something that he's really taken on a huge support of is what they call Keep America Fishing, which works to keep our oceans, lakes, river streams open, clean, and full of fish.
First lap for Truex, 49.80. That's around the top 25 of best first laps.
A lot like David Rudem and his teammates. Father's always around. Buzzy Rudem, I saw Martin Sr. He's usually hanging around with the boys, putting in his 2 cents worth.
And like David's dad, Martin's dad had a lot of success, especially up at Loudon, New Hampshire.
Yes, sir.
In what was the Busch North Series then?
Always had beautiful race cars. Real, I think I would call poppy red, real bright orange.
Talked early in the show that the Toyota camp just didn't seem to have the speed for qualifying. This is a Toyota right now, only one Toyota in the top 20, and that's his teammate David Rudem, we just spoke about.
28 for Truex with a 49.05, 183.4. Next Sunday, America's Best compete in racing's biggest event here at the newly paved Daytona International Speedway. We expect a lot of 3-wide racing. Will they pair up? Will there be freight train drafts? You're going to have to tune in to see what we think will be the most competitive and exciting 500 in recent history. The Daytona 500 pre-race show delivered by Pizza Hut gets us going next Sunday at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific in high definition, only on Fox.
Well, how competitive will it be? How about all those lead changes last night in 75 laps?
Last night in the Bud Shootout, we had more lead changes in just 75 laps. The Daytona 500 is 200 laps. Half the Daytona 500s didn't have as many lead changes as we had last night. Today's aerial coverage brought to you by Goodyear, the official tire of NASCAR. Everything we've learned making tires for one of racing's most grueling proving grounds inspires what we roll into yours. Goodyear, more driven.
And that's also a rarity. I don't think I've heard a soul say a word about tires.
And that's a beautiful thing.
It is, it really is. I know. Oh, what's this all about? Man, he's got something on his car.
Trouble for Hamlin.
The right front tire is headed toward the infield, right where he is.
What in the world?
Looks like the steering locked to the left, all the way to the left.
Car owner Joe Gibbs looking on and looking for the replay.
And looking rather worried as well.
Now let's watch this. Now Hamlin's getting away from the grass. Now he's still on the clock. And he pulls away as a crewman looks attentively underneath the car.
Now, didn't they change the engine in this car, Larry?
Yes, they did. Yeah, they were going to have to start the race at the back of the dual races on Thursday.
That car, it is. It's just locked full left lock.
Never seen anything like that before.
So since the engine change, since practice, the car's not been on the racetrack.
No.
They've rolled it around the garage through inspection, but nobody's driven it. They push it through inspection and push it out to the line.
But he's out on the racetrack now, and I mean, he's about to try to go 180 something miles an hour with a car that just was locked up to the left.
Got the tape. Not going to be a very good lap because the tape's shoved up off the opening in the grill there. That'll slow it down. Plus, I don't know if he had any damage from running it through the grass over there or not. But
Larry, I wonder if one of those manual steering boxes, maybe they've gone to that and for some reason something worked just right. But the other thing is, Mike, I think you might be onto something too.
If the steering wheel, which fits on over splines and is locked onto that column with a spring-loaded retainer, if that steering wheel comes off, what are the wheels going to do? Go dead left.
Yeah. Yeah, because these steering wheels have a quick release on it to where the driver can get in and out of the race car with ease.
There's more to this story. But you
look,
can see
there's no damage to the car with the new nose on these cars. They're quite resilient.
Oh, yeah. The old style car, the way the splitter was, I mean, it would have destroyed it. The one thing that's going to hurt it, and I think Darrell mentioned it, it's pulled that tape up. You want as much tape on that nose as you can. That really helps the straightaway speed.
I think what he's really doing here, since they had an engine change, just put a couple laps on it and see if there's anything else if everything else is all right.
Because I briefly mentioned that when you change an engine per the NASCAR rule, the next race, which in the case of what we have down here would be the dual races on Thursday, you're going to have to start at the rear anyhow. I think that's all he's trying to do, get a couple laps, because they won't be back on the racetrack until practice on Wednesday.
So a very strange start to this qualifying run for Denny Hamlin, but he gets it up and going. He'll complete his 2-lap run. And Hamlin will be 34th.
And whatever it was, he knows what it was, because he wouldn't have made this run if he didn't.
Hamlin off and into the grass, and the go or go homers come out to qualify next.
Yeah.
Denny Hamlin climbs out after his qualifying lap, which would not go as intended. He ends up 34th for the moment. Debriefs with the crew.
You just tell by his hand signals. He thought he had the wheel on. When he pulled back on it, it came off. That's what it sounds like.
Krista?
Yeah, Denny Hamlin talking things over with the crew. And we heard you say a couple of different things on the radio. Locking to the left, steering wheel coming off. What exactly happened inside the race car?
Yeah, it just locked and came to the left. So it's a different steering column than what I'm necessarily accustomed to. So just that was about it. It was a very eventful 2 laps.
Well, the silver lining is obviously with this new car, you were able to take laps and at least get some practice. You've changed that engine, so Thursday going to the back, did you learn anything then on those laps with what happened?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's we knew we were going to qualify pretty bad, but obviously that didn't help too much. So for us, we knew we were going to have to come from the back. We changed engines, transmissions, and everything. So this was just kind of a trial run to kind of see where we stood with our teammates.
Ever seen anything like that happen before?
Yes, for sure.
Completing his qualifying run, Dave Blaney. Blaney, former World of Outlaws sprint car star, known as a really good qualifier, and he has put Tommy Baldwin's Chevrolet into the field 22nd fastest. This begins what would normally be the go or go homers in qualifying, but because we have the Thursday races to set the field, these drivers will earn spots in their Thursday qualifying race with this qualifying run, and we know that the fastest 3 of the remaining drivers, beginning with Blaney, will be guaranteed spots in the 500, because if they don't race their way in Thursday, they can fall back on today's qualifying speed. There are 4 such slots available, but one is reserved for a past Sprint Cup champion if needed, and there are 2 drivers eligible for that, Terry Labonte and Bill Elliott.
Yeah, because in the dual races on Thursday, the top 2 finishers from each duel that are part of our go or go homers, they will lock themselves into the 2011 Daytona 500.
Cactus Jack's son, J.J. Yaley, both sprint car stars in their native Arizona. J.J. finished 12th in the 500 in 2007 for Joe Gibbs Racing, his best Daytona finish in 6 starts.
Back in 2009, he was actually seriously injured in a USAC race, breaking 3 cervical vertebrae, and then he returned to NASCAR last February here in Daytona in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series.
37th on the first lap for Yaley, who finished 19th here for this team last July.
You know, going back to that lap that Dave Blaney ran at 48.96, I think we've got to obviously see a few more cars run, but that's a pretty good lap for one of the go-or-go-homers.
We call them go-or-go-homers because these are teams who do not have top 35 car owner points from last season that would guarantee them a spot in the 500. So they've got to go or they go home.
Yeah, and of course, you know, you can roll the dice back here. You can do everything feasibly possible to one of these cars, which I think a couple of guys just may try a few little things that'll help their car for qualifying anyway.
Yaley is 36th at a 49.73. $11 drivers left to attempt qualifying. For most of them, this will determine where they will line up Thursday in the Gatorade Duel. Well, for all of them, and at least one of them, Bill Elliott, we think has a legitimate shot to start the 500 up toward the front. Dale Earnhardt Jr., should he win the pole, it would be his first ever restrictor plate pole at Daytona and Talladega. Found that surprising given the success he's had in race trim at these two tracks.
Yeah, this is kind of shaking out the way we thought it would. The Hendrick cars, and we figured the Childress cars and Hendrick cars would be a battle between them. Looks like Hendrick's going to win this one.
But it's certainly the most pleasant surprise, and I will say pleasant would be Trevor Bayne driving for the Wood brothers, sitting up there in the 3rd spot right now. So we know it looks like he very possibly, when we get the Gatorade Duel races on Thursday, that he's going to start from the front row of one of those races.
However, he's going to have to finish up front to start the 500 up front because in the qualifying race, you've got to perform to earn that spot for Sunday, unless you're on the front row today. Today sets the fastest 2 to the front row for the Daytona 500. We know who's locked into race, those that have top 35 car owner points. Then we'll take the 2 highest finishers in each Gatorade Duel race on Thursday, add in the past champions provisional if needed, and the fastest 3, or if the champions provisional is not needed, 4 drivers from today's pole qualifying. That's how the 43 car field is set. Right now, Dale Earnhardt Jr. trying to become the 36th driver in Daytona 500 history to score a pole position. Michael Waltrip started the race 2nd in 2008. He won one of those front row spots. 2-time winner of the 500, 01 and 03.
He and Tony Stewart last night did a little tap dancing. Everybody else was doing a little bump drafting. They did a little tap dancing up in turn 3 over there, and sent Michael around and tore his car up.
And you know, that first win, the 2001 Daytona 500, of course, that's when his friend and his car owner, Dale Earnhardt Sr., was killed in turn 4. And Michael said the biggest thing that Dale Earnhardt Sr. gave him when he hired him was confidence, something he had never really had his entire career.
See, in my opinion, that's in every driver. Jamie McMurray comes to mind right away. Any driver that's kind of been beaten down or beaten up by the previous team he was on goes somewhere and they embrace him. They make him feel like he's important, and they are confident that he can get the job done. That raises his level of performance right up.
Second lap for Waltrip. He is the fastest of the drivers not locked into the field as he eclipses Dave Blaney's time. Michael is 22nd overall. 1000 and an Indy racer. His uncle Rick, a 4-time Indy winner. And Casey now a NASCAR veteran, making his 8th appearance in the 500. Hopefully there is his crew chief, Booty Barker.
Has an engineering degree and actually spent a number of years working over at Hendrick Motorsports. Was a shock specialist on the 24 team under Ray Evernham for Jeff Gordon.
He's got one of those crew chief watches too. I just saw him pull it. There you go, down on the apron.
Second lap for Mears.
Perfectly legal right now.
Picks him up to 49.21. 182.8 miles an hour. He is 32nd fastest overall, and he will have to race his way into the 500 next Thursday. Waltrip and Blaney look pretty safe. They'll likely be joined as Bill Elliott. The fastest 3 in practice will likely be the 3 fastest drivers not yet in the field, who after today will likely know that they will be in the 500.
Bill's standing there saying, yeah, old piece looks pretty good. Old piece is running pretty fast.
Tonight on Fox, animation. Larry, your jet landing?
No, not mine.
Oh.
No.
Okay.
I have a jet. It has U.S. Airways down the side.
Oh, okay. Joe Nemechek getting ready to roll. Joe has 2 cars here for the 500, his own and one that will be driven by Kevin Conway. Is that your jet, Larry?
That's not it either.
No, that's Hammond's.
That's our director,
right
Artie
there.
Kempner's.
But that would be more my style, something with propellers on each side. No jet engines.
Matter of fact, I could see Larry and Hammond just driving that thing, you know?
I couldn't.
Taxi it, maybe.
Yeah.
Joe Nemechek acquired the moniker Front Row Joe. He was quite a qualifier back in the day. However, he's never had a front row start at Daytona. His best qualifying effort here is 14th. He's driven for Hendrick, for Felix Sabates, for a variety of car owners, Bobby Ginn, and now runs his own racing operation.
Joe's 47 years old. He was our 1992 Nationwide Series champion. He started his racing career at age 13 in motocross, and over the next 6 years won over 300 races in motocross.
Joe does it a lot like we used to do it years and years ago. He's not just a driver, he's a crew member. He works on the cars, he works in the shop, he and Philippe. And, you know, he's got a small operation, and they do a lot with a very few people.
Joe has 10 career poles in the Sprint Cup Series, 4 wins. And he's been successful here at Daytona with 5 poles in the Nationwide Series here.
Yeah, looking at our go or go homers so far, Daryl and I were talking during the commercial break. Feel pretty good about that 48.92 that Michael Waltrip ran, and even possibly the 48.96 that Dave Blaney ran. But certainly we know J.J. Yaley, he'll have to race his way in, and don't feel that great about Casey Mears' 49.21.
First lap for Nemechek, 49.48.
Not bad. Should be able to pick that up to around a flat, and if you can get into 48s, I think that's not a bad run, really.
Daryl, that is a real good first lap. That is actually the fastest first lap of the go or go homers.
I think he may have not used up the entire racetrack to get that first good lap or not.
Right now, Daryl, he's tracking 19th, and that would make him the fastest in this group.
Yes, it would. So, absolutely.
Wherever Joe chose to ran, it's the fast way around for that car.
I tell you what else he's flirting with. He's flirting with being the fastest Toyota so far in this qualifying session.
Done. 19th overall, 48.85. Joe Nemechek has qualified faster than all of the factory-backed Toyotas.
Yeah, because going in, I felt like being in the 48s would put you pretty safe of being one of the fastest 3, but I don't think that's going to be the case.
So likely Nemechek is safe and will be in the 500, but there are still 8 cars left to time trial. And should 3 of them run faster than Joe, then he would have to race his way in on Thursday to make it into the Great American Race. Krista?
Yeah, Mike, this is the drama, racing your way into the Daytona 500. Is it going to be 4 sleepless nights now for you, Casey, to prepare for the duel on Thursday?
I don't know. I'll tell you Thursday. You know, I really don't know. We're really disappointed today. We thought we had more form than that. For some reason, it just didn't accelerate, even like it did in practice. When I leave pit road and I go through 4 gears, there was a point that I was getting the 4th gear every time in the center of 1 and 2, and I got the 4th way later. You know, so it just didn't accelerate. It didn't run. So I don't know why that is. Everything that we did, you know, in practice and everything we did last in the test, every time we did it, we picked up, you know, good 2 or 3 tenths, and we ended up running the same thing we did in practice. So I think everybody's pretty disappointed. They worked really hard, but for some reason, and we don't know why, it just didn't accelerate, didn't run as good as it did that time.
So some question marks to figure out before Thursday for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's a big issue, but for some reason, whatever we did just didn't play out at all like we thought it was going to, and obviously we're in a lot tighter spot because of it. You know, we just got to, you know, put our heads down now and kind of really look at, you know, how that Bud shootout went, and depending on what, you know, 150 you're in, maybe you can watch the first one and kind of get some ideas and hopefully have some friends, because it's a totally different way of racing now. So, you know, hopefully we can get hooked up with somebody and be where we need to be at the end.
Thanks. Steve?
You know, Krista, Jeff Hammond's always talking about the little details that make these cars go quicker, even a fraction of a second here in Daytona. Let me give you an idea. This is one of the decals that all of these cars have to put on the front of the car. And look how narrow it is. But they want everything out of the wind that they can. I talked to one of the body guys with Hendrick Motorsports, and he said that they'll put 7 coats of clear coat on this car just so the decal doesn't have a raised edge. They'll clear coat it, sand it, clear coat it again, bake it, sand it. All in all, 7 coats just to keep the seam of a decal out of the wind.
Roger Penske, for his Indy cars, the decals were 2 mils thick. John McKenzie was telling me, Motorsports Designs. Penske said no. Penske and his people said, we want 1 mil thickness decals and we'll make them stick. It used to be a game of inches. Now it's a game of thousandths of an inch. Now here is the ghost lap image of the 4 fastest qualifiers so far relative to one another. Coming off turn number 4, different lines, similar results. First to fourth, 17 100ths of a second.
Yeah, the 88 and the 21 ran the same line, and looked like Jeff Gordon moved up a little bit. Looked like Paul Menard moved up just a little bit, just enough to hurt.
Well, if the front row is going to change, this is the driver who could make it happen. Bill Elliott, a 4-time winner of the 500, a mark he shares with Cale Yarborough and Buddy Baker for the most poles ever for the 500.
Bill has won NASCAR's most popular driver award 16 times. Didn't hear a lot of people say anything bad about Bill Elliott when he was racing full time.
A 2-time winner of the 500, 1985 and 87. And in those 3 years, he won the pole all 3 years, 85, 6, and 7.
And when with him, it was a family affair. It was his dad, George, and Ernie and his brothers and everybody. They all worked on that car. And
Ernie did the engines, Dan did the transmissions.
Yeah,
family race team.
It really was. And man, did they turn some heads, especially in 1985.
And a great champion, Benny Parsons, was a manufacturer's rep for Harry Melling's oil pump company up in Michigan. Got Melling and the Elliots together, and they made history.
They did. They made good music together. I know that.
And he is flirting with the fastest first lap of our Go or Go Homers. When I look right there, right on first lap, 36 quickest. That's right there in that 49-40 range. Actually, 49-28 Bill's first lap.
Oh yeah, he's going to jump
be a
over
great
there.
lap.
Should be in the 48-70s probably.
And it's all in the family for the Elliots. His son won that big pass late model race at the reopened North Wilkesboro, North Carolina Speedway last year.
Yeah, and he won, I think it was Lanier here just recently. He and David Reagan have a heck of a battle, and Chase came out on top. He's 15 years old.
But boy, this second lap does not look like what we'd expected.
It's not moving, is it?
17.
But the thing it will do, there's no question, I think it's going to safely lock him into the Daytona 500.
Bill Elliott driving for James Finch, who won Talladega with Brad Keselowski. 17th for Elliott, 48.77, 184.5. He is the fastest go or go homer. He'll be in the Daytona 500. 7 cars to go. Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Jeff Gordon presently on the front row in Chevrolets. Then Trevor Baynes Ford, Paul Menard and Clint Boyer are the Fast 5 right now, as the Onion, that's what Randy LaJoie nicknamed Todd Bodine early on in his career, and driving for the Germain Motorsports Group in all 3 big races here in Daytona. Todd Bodine times in at a 49.16. He will have to race his way into the 500. Krista?
Joe Nemechek's nickname Front Row Joe. Okay, it's not the front row literally, but it's got to feel like it. Where did all that speed come from?
I tell you what, we struggled a little bit yesterday, but I got to thank all the guys that have helped us out. Got a lot of part-time guys that just come to help, and Felipe Lopez, my crew chief, did an awesome job. We got a new sponsor on board, amfmenergy.com. Check it out. We got all kinds of great products on there, so guys, check it out. It's just great to be back here in Daytona. You know, we struggled yesterday, didn't really know what was wrong with our car, and we made a lot of adjustments last night and this morning, and I never thought it would run that fast. I was hoping it'd run a flat, and you know, you have to get what you can get, but the engine guys tuned the motor up. Triad, thank you very much, and it was a good lap, so we'll see.
Feels as good as, if not better than, the front row.
Well, there are 16 Toyotas here, and Nemechek is the fastest of all of them, and he will race in the 500. Travis Kvapil from Wisconsin, star of the Truck Series, where he will compete all season long, and he'll also race here for a front row in this number 38 Ford, trying to make his 6th Daytona 500. He went to see the Packers play last week in the Super Bowl.
A lot of the NASCAR boys were out there.
No report if he was the guy wearing the cheese head or not. 2003 champion of the Truck Series. And we are told Steve Burns has photographic evidence that, yes, Travis was wearing one of those big wedges of cheese.
Oh,
all right.
Okay.
Attaboy.
Okay. Yeah, you talk about him running full-time in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series this year. When Toyota made their move to NASCAR in 2004, it was in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series, and Travis Kvapil was part of bringing them their first NASCAR win.
Right now, he has to beat a 48.92. That's Michael Waltrip's time to be assured of starting the 500. If not, then he will have to race his way in. So Waltrip right now is 24th, and Kvapil has a chance at that.
Yeah, that's a good first lap.
That's exactly what Michael ran on his first lap.
Lost a little bit in turn 2, trying to gain it back in the backstretch, and that needle in the ticker's working the right way. Yeah. Headed to the left.
Yeah, he's got a little speed down the back. Not a lot of headwind now. It's pretty well died down. That's a big plus.
Could be a top 20 run for the Janesville, Wisconsin driver.
He could just get it back over there just a teeny bit.
Sweeps up a little high out of turn 4. That's the long way around, but here's the checker.
Coming.
He's going to be in good shape. Good shape.
Third fastest of the cars second fastest of the cars not yet qualified. Travis Kvapil 20th overall.
Nice run.
He can breathe a little easier.
Daytona 500 qualifying on Fox is sponsored by GoDaddy.com, domains, websites, and everything in between. By Lowe's, let's build something together. And by Subway Restaurants, it's February. All month, any footlong is a $5 footlong. It is the biggest race.
Start of a new season.
You never know what's going to happen. This is going to be the best 500 ever.
And it's coming at you next Sunday, right here on Fox.
I think a lot of those finishes like we saw based on the Budweiser shootout, I think we could be in store for the same thing. We will not know, possibly to the end of the trial will come to the checkered flag, who's going to win this thing.
Well, a lot of last lap passes here at Daytona. Most of the last 3 or 4 Daytonas have been decided by a last lap pass. You don't get that everywhere we go.
Derek Cope on track, completing his qualifying run, the 1990 Daytona 500 winner. He also won Dover that year. 50-59 for Cope. As we have 4 cars left to go, he will have to try and race his way in on Thursday to make the 500. Krista?
Awesome Bill from Dawsonville is feeling pretty awesome right now. You've raced a lot of races at this racetrack. How does that new pavement feel to you, and how do you feel about those laps?
The pavement's great. I mean, it wouldn't. I'd been coming here since '76, and I was here before they paved it what I know a few years ago, and then now they've been back again. It's great. The pavement's great. Racetrack feels good, can do, and you know, I'm just glad we turned in a good lap. I mean, you stay nervous about these deals because it don't take anything for a guy to make one mistake, you know, and then put you out of the deal. And that, I mean, that's what you got to do, is just make sure you don't make any mistakes, run as fast as you possibly can run. Because, you know, we know we're not in contention for the pole, but we need to be there, at least guaranteed one of those spots, because you never know what happens on Thursday.
Even with all that experience, there's still some nerves. That's the Daytona 500.
Well, Bill Elliott's the only driver here who raced on the Speedway's original asphalt that was laid down in 1959. And then, of course, it was repaved for 1979 and repaved again for this year. But Bill's the only driver in the 500 field to run on all three surfaces.
Just seeing Michael McDowell come to the green here, and I see he's got Motor Racing Outreach, our ministry, on the hood of that car. That's a real nice gesture on his part. He's a real strong Christian guy, and he's doing a little promoting for MRO.
Well, his car owners, Randy Humphrey and Phil Parsons. Isn't Phil on the board?
Yes,
Phil's of MRO, which does great things for all of us in the sport. I'm glad to see that. Now, this was a two-car team last year, but Humphrey and Parsons have cut this back to a one-car operation, seeking sponsorship to race the full race when they can throughout the 36 race schedule.
Yeah, they renamed it to HP Racing LLC. Actually even moved into a bigger shop. A little more resources to pull from.
Michael's a good kid. He speaks to a lot of churches. He really works closely with the youth. He's just a really good guy.
First lap 49.92. Does not appear that he will threaten Bill Elliott, Travis Kvapil, and Joe Nemechek. About half a second off of their first lap time. So he's just looking for a good starting spot for Thursday to try to make the 500.
You know, Darrell, we know how much that young kids, especially young race car drivers, enjoy iRacing and racing simulators. Michael spends an average of 4 hours a day driving a computer racing simulator every single day.
Wow. Unbelievable. I spend 4 hours a day on Twitter, but I never have quite made it to iRace yet.
Michael did race his way into the 500 last year for his only Daytona 500 start. And he clocks in 39th fastest with a 49.33, 182.4. 3 drivers to go in Daytona 500 pole qualifying.
Daytona 500 qualifying on Fox is sponsored by Sprint, proud sponsor of the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series. A few cars remain here. Pole qualifying just about wrapped up for next Sunday's Daytona 500. Jeff Hammond, this is the way it looks. You know, we talk about two drivers tangoing, finding that draft partner. This is the way the front row would stand. It looks like it's going to hold up. Could those two, you know, they share a garage, teammates, could those two over 500 miles next Sunday team up and race around the track?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing that you're looking for. We heard Jeff Gordon last night. He was complaining because he couldn't find the right person to run with until Kevin Harvick came along. He was able to partner up then he kind of made a run at the front. Dale Earnhardt Jr. may be exactly what he's looking for. We know they're going to be starting up front in the 500, so this is going to be real interesting to see how it kind of plays out.
And our Ghost Car Index, as we take a look, there's nothing wrong with your TV set.
Oh, no, and this is exactly what we're talking about. You see where Dale Jr. is running his line compared to Jeff Gordon. Well, if they can work on this to where they shadow each other even better, you could imagine how much faster they're going to have an opportunity to be when they drop the green flag on Sunday for the 500. And that's what you're looking for, is two guys who can basically run as one, be as one. These two teammates can be exactly what the doctor ordered.
And who else might figure into that mix?
Oh, that's where the big $54 question really is, because you don't know. You're going to be looking from here till they drop the green flag on Sunday. Who is the guy that you can do the best? Can you push better, or can you actually be the guy out front kind of directing the traffic? So who is the most comfortable out front? That's going to be the big question between now and next Sunday.
Usually it's a $6,400 question, but you know, with cutbacks, the economy.
Exactly right. I'm a little bit on the cheap side.
Let's rejoin Darrell, Larry, and Mike.
Now, if I understand the change at Hendrick's right, over at Rick, over at Hendrick's Motorsports, the 88 car is the 24 car.
It's last year's 24 car and crew with new numbers on it, right?
And the 24 car is the 5 car.
Was the 5 car and
last
crew.
year.
Alan Gustafson and his cars and his crew, yes.
Because all they did is change drivers. They didn't change cars or equipment. They changed drivers.
Essentially, yes.
And put different drivers in different situations.
Yeah, in simple terms, those 3 drivers, their seats, their spotter, their sponsor, and their number moved to a different race team.
Kevin Conway has done some moving to different race teams. He started out in what were at front row last year, moved to Robbie Gordon's team late in the season, and now he's worked a deal with Joe Nemechek to bring a car here for the 500. He is the 2010 Rookie of the Year in the Sprint Cup Series, and his second lap is 49.19, 182.9 miles per hour, 36th overall. So of those go or go homers, he is 7th. And will have to race his way into the 500.
Respectable lap.
And what we're doing now with only 2 cars left to go, Bill Elliott is locked into the Daytona 500. Don't know where he's going to start just yet.
Krista?
Travis Kvapil with one of those good laps. He gets out of the car and says, that feeling is just like how I felt last week when your team, the Packers, won the Super Bowl.
That's exactly what it felt like. It's not like qualifying at Texas where I was shaking, but I was shaking when I got out of the car. It's just, as a driver, you don't really have much control of what's going on. It's just all about the team and the engine, and just really proud of everybody at Front Row Motorsports. We literally didn't get this car in our shop till January 15th, and we had 3 or 4 weeks to work on it. It hasn't been in the wind tunnel, hasn't been in the 7-post, any of that stuff, but the guys just worked really hard, and Doug Yates and his gang obviously put a great motor under the hood, so really proud of everybody involved with the effort they put into it, and it's a great way to kick the year off.
We have to find a championship belt for you like Rogers.
That'd be good. That'd be good.
Thanks, Krista. Terry Labonte comes out next, and we know Labonte will be in the 500 because of the various ways to make the field. As the 1984 and 96 series champion, he is the most recent champion not yet qualified, so he has that provisional to fall back on if needed.
And I'd say that's really a beautiful thing for these guys because that was the way they had it planned.
Frank Stoddard is the car owner. He was a crew chief last year and has been for most of his Sprint Cup career. Won races at Roush Racing with Jeff Burton. His longtime backer, U.S. Chrome, comes with him to form this brand new race team. Terry Labonte will drive here, and other drivers will complete out the season for them.
And it's completely brand new. The paint's not even dry yet because it just came together a few weeks ago, and as you mentioned, running the full schedule, and Mike Skinner going to possibly race at Phoenix next week, I think, for this team.
And Frankie Stoddard, he's a racer. You know, he wants to be at the racetrack. He wants to race, just like Tommy Baldwin. They're racers. They guys that they got it in their blood. They'll do anything to get a car to the track and race it.
As Labonte completes his run, let's check with Steve.
And with Jeff Gordon in, what does it say about Hendrick Motorsports to see that 88 and the 24 on the pylon right behind you?
Oh, that's awesome. Really excited about all the effort that is, being put out for Daytona. This is a very special race, and it means a lot to Rick. It means a lot to all the people, all the Hendrick employees, and certainly excited for these 2 teams, and very excited about what we're doing with the Drive to End Hunger. And if you go to drivetoendhunger.org, we've got a food drive going on right now in Central Florida, and if you want to learn more, go there, because just loving all the support that we're already getting, and we're going to help a lot of people out.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Steve. Terry Labonte first came here in 1979 for Texas oilman Billy Hagan. He's raced here for Junior Johnson, for Leo Jackson, for Rick Hendrick, and now for Frank Stoddard. And he will be in the 500, either from racing his way in on Thursday or from the Champions Provisional. This is not one of the 3 fastest laps among the go-or-go homers. 1 car to go, and qualifying will be done. 35 drivers have won a Daytona 500 pole. Dale Jr. would be the 36th. And Darrell, as we said earlier, a third of the Daytona 500s almost have been won from the front row.
Yeah, and of course 9 of those races have won for its last lap passes. So we're setting up for some pretty exciting stuff here. And all the cars qualified. I heard one roar, really loud roar. As a matter of fact, I looked around. What happened? month when that 88 car sat on the pole. That's big.
And when I look at that front row, when you just think about those two drivers, they've each only won one race in the last 3 years. And here they are with new race teams, the new guys around them. And I'm sure both of them would love to start 2011 by winning the great American race, the Daytona 500.
Absolutely. Now, all we know today is who will be on the front row. Everything else will be settled on Thursday during the Gatorade dual races, 150 miles each. The Daytona 500 will be Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s 400th career Sprint Cup start. Look at the drivers who have won the pole in their 400th start. They're all Hall of Famers. Lee Petty, Richard Petty, the sports all-time winner. David Pearson, second all-time. Rusty Wallace, the '89 champion. And two-time champion Tony Stewart. All won the pole for their 400th start. On track, our final qualifier is the fourth Dodge in the 500 field. Brian Keselowski, Brad Keselowski's brother, intends to run for Rookie of the Year this year. That's the yellow stripe across the back bumper of that number 92. His brother Kurt Busch and Robbie Gordon are the other Chargers trying to make the race.
That run that Terry Labonte made, we just had talked to, Krista just talked to Travis Kvapil. We know that he will be one of those cars now that's locked into the Daytona 500.
First lap for Keselowski, 51.51. And that will anchor the field. So it's a safe bet that the drivers who know today that they will make the race from the go or go home group will be Bill Elliott, Travis Kvapil, Joe Nemechek, and Terry Labonte.
And I highly encourage you to tune in to Speed on Thursday to watch those Gatorade dual qualifying races, because it's huge for every driver in the field, but especially for those four drivers, two from each race, that will make the Daytona 500.
Everybody says, oh, well, you know, what's a qualifying race? Listen, there's pride at stake. There's a trophy to be won. There's a starting spot to be gained. There's a pit road selection that to be made. There's a lot that hinges on your performance in that race. Plus, there's the gold. You want to get the ball across the goal first.
So Brian Keselowski, 50.68, anchors the 48-car field, trying to make one of the 43 starting spots. And the only drivers who know where they'll start next Sunday are Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Jeff Gordon. Earnhardt has his 10th Sprint Cup pole in his 400th start and his first Daytona 500 pole. More from Daytona after this.
Promotional considerations provided by a week from today, the 53rd running of the Daytona 500 on Fox, and that car, the driver, Dale Earnhardt Jr., for the 8th straight year, voted NASCAR's most popular driver, will be on the pole, the front row to start the race. He is standing by with our Dick Bergman.
And congratulations to you, Dale. Oh, new deal, new crew chief. That brings new cars. It brings new people working on your car for pit stops. New attitude as well?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're fired up. You know, I had a great car today. I didn't really have a whole lot to do with it. Just had to hold it on the bottom as tight as I could to the apron, and the power and the body and everything does all the work. And a lot of great guys working at Hendrick that built some awesome cars, and we got the front row again for the second year in a row. We're real proud of that.
What does winning the pole do for your confidence and the potential to win the Daytona 500?
Well, I think it makes you, obviously gives you a good idea that you got a great car, but anybody can win the race. I mean, there's guys that qualified outside the top 20 that got winning cars, so it's going to be a tough race to win. We're going to work really hard. The main thing that it does for me is it takes a lot of pressure off for the qualifier. I can just go out there and have fun, we'll just have fun winning that race, and don't have to really worry about where I need to finish and where I do finish to get a good starting spot for the 500. So we can just go out and try to have fun, win that thing, and try to bring all the hardware home this week.
Yeah, winning the Daytona 500 would be fun. Chris, Jeff.
All right, thank you, Dick, and Junior. Of course, Jeff Gordon on the front row. His family taking in the moment here. Can you imagine Jeff Hammond, 10 years from the day Dale Earnhardt lost his life at Daytona. For Dale Earnhardt Jr. To be able to bounce back and put a spark in his career and pull off a victory in the Great American Race.
I mean, it would be huge. I mean, you think about the stages now set that he has that opportunity to go from the pole, win the 500, probably one of the fastest 500s you would be set up. I mean, speeds over 200 miles an hour, a new surface. You know, so much history right now around this racetrack. You know, when last time they repaved it, what happened, so many things. I mean, this stage for the 500 is probably set better than it's ever been set before.
It's the biggest race you can win, and of course NASCAR's rule, it's putting more of a priority on winning early before you even get to the chase. At noon Eastern, the pre-race show brought to you by Pizza Hut. Among the stories we'll look back on Dale Earnhardt. We'll talk about the latest news from the drivers and who can stop the 5-time champ, the athlete of the year a couple of years ago, Jimmy Johnson. More on the track here at Daytona as well. Nearly 75% of the drivers who start in the top 10 have gone on to win the Daytona 500. That's good news for Jeff Gordon and Dale Earnhardt Jr. For Darrell, Larry, and Mike, Matt, Steve, Dick, and Krista, and Jeff Hammond, I'm Chris Myers. Have a great week. Thanks for being a part of NASCAR on Fox, and we hope to see you next Sunday right here for the Daytona 500.
This is more than a ticket. It's a wallet-sized definition of who you are and where you belong, providing both a place to sit and countless chances to stand up for what you believe in. It's a rite of passage, a declaration of independence, and an invitation to discover 43 new heroes and 100,000 new friends. This is more than a ticket, because it says as much about you as any piece of paper can. Reserve yours today at NASCAR.com/tickets.
This copyrighted telecast may not be reproduced, retransmitted, or used in any form without the authorized written consent of NASCAR Broadcasting. NASCAR would like to thank all of our loyal fans for your continued support, and we hope you enjoyed today's broadcast.